Chapter 600. Jiang Hai only liked to drink two kinds of beer, Corona and Budweiser. Both of these beers were rather light, and there was almost no bitterness in them at all. Paired with lemon juice, it was like a cocktail. The taste was about the same, but there was a bit of steam. It was like a carbonated alcoholic drink. It was different from the so-called pineapple beer. The taste was quite good, and there was a bit of alcohol in it. At least, it was not worse than ordinary beer. Ordinary beer's original juice concentration was about 9% to 11%. This kind of beer was more than 11%. Although it was only a little more than 10%, it meant that its alcohol content was not lower than ordinary beer. But this kind of beer was better than ordinary beer. Of course, this was not absolute. If Jiang Hai's father's generation drank it, they would say, "How is this good?" It was like water, and there was no alcohol taste at all. In this regard, Jiang Hai had nothing to say. For example, Edward Anderson and Robbins Garcia did not like to drink this kind of beer. They preferred to drink Cowboy Song's homebrewed barley beer, but Bell and the others liked to drink this. After Jiang Hai tasted it once, he stored a lot of this kind of beer at home. There were more choices in the United States than in China. He could buy beer from almost all the countries in the world here. The famous German and Huaxia beers were available here. But when it comes to drinking, he still likes to drink these two kinds. Hearing Jiang Hai and Fu Yuan's conversation, Huang Yunfei and Su Wei also came over. After opening a bottle, they took a sip and couldn't help but nod secretly. There was no taste, and it was particularly refreshing. After adding some lemon juice, their eyes unconsciously widened. It was really delicious. Looking at Huang Yunfei's appearance, LV Jiao also walked over curiously and took a sip. Then she also liked the taste. But she was different from Huang Yunfei and Jiang Hai. After all, she was a woman, so she just held a bottle and drank. It's boring to just drink and look at the sky. Let's fish for lunch. Jiang Haibei finished a bottle of beer very quickly. Then, he looked at his buddies and suggested to them. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, these people were a little eager to try. It was indeed not good to come here without fishing. So they went to the cabin and took out Jiang Hai's fishing rod. Jiang Hai only put a total of 3 fishing rods here, one for each of them. Then they put on the fake bait, which was specially bought by Jiang Hai after the night fishing, and started fishing. "Jiang Hai, don't you want to fish?" Looking at the 3 people holding a fishing rod, under the command of Fu Yuan, who once fished at sea, they started fishing. Well, Fu Yuan also fished here because of Jiang Hai. Except for him, no one else has fished at sea, but it seems that they are really good at it. And LV Jiao stood beside Huang Yunfei and looked at Jiang Hai standing next to him. She couldn't help but ask him. In her opinion, her husband, the 3 of them snatched Jiang Hai's fishing rod and left Jiang Hai out there in the sun. Fishing. Hearing LV Jiao's question, Jiang Hai smiled and began to arrange the fishing line around him. "But you don't have a fishing rod, how can you fish?" "Yunfei, give the fishing rod to Jiang Hai." Hearing Jiang Hai say that he wants to fish, LV Jiao couldn't help but ask him with some doubts. Then she turned to look at Huang Yunfei and asked him to give up a fishing rod first. But now Huang Yunfei is in a good mood, directly asking him to return the fishing rod. He is somewhat unwilling. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, several people here can't help but frown and look at Jiang Hai in unison. "No need for fishing rods, let them use these things, I can catch more than them without a fishing rod." Especially Huang Yunfei, who kept the fishing rod, looked at Jiang Hai and said loudly, "You're bragging, you don't need a fishing rod, let me see." Hearing his words, Jiang Hai looked at him with contempt, then took a fake bait and hung it on his fishing line, then tied a lot of colorful stripes on the fishing line. Under their gaze, Jiang Hai directly threw the fishing line into the sea. "You don't know it, but it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Today I will open your eyes." Looking at Jiang Hai pulling the fishing line and preparing to fish, several people were a little confused. Jiang Hai is not crazy. And Jiang Hai actually dared to say such words at this time? I think you are really, damn, you really took the bait. Su Wei, who was the closest to Jiang Hai, was just about to mock Jiang Hai, but he didn't expect that Jiang Hai suddenly began to reel in the fishing line, and he saw a fish jumping out of the water on the fishing line in the distance. Where? Really? Damn, what the hell is this? Does this sea look at people? Following Su Wei's strange cry, several other people came over and watched Jiang Hai quickly reel in the fishing line. And when the fishing line was completely retracted, a fish about the size of a palm was already jumping on the fake bait. What kind of fish is this? Looking at the palm-sized fish, Fu Yuan was also a little confused and asked Jiang Hai. This is a small tuna fish, it is useless, it doesn't taste good, this is used as bait. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai also smiled and explained to him. Yes, now Jiang Hai is using the fishing technique that he was shocked by the local girl when he was in the Caribbean. A fishing line, some colored rope, and a hook can catch fish. Compared to this kind of fishing method, using a fishing rod to fish was indeed much more lowly. Of course, professionals still have to use a fishing rod because only a fishing rod can catch big fish. This kind of fishing, except for catching some brainless carnivorous fish, has no effect on some smart big fish. But this thing is enough to scare Fu Yuan and the others. After watching Jiang Hai take the small tuna fish off the hook and throw it into the tank next to him, the four people stopped fishing and just looked at the fish. However, Jiang Hai didn't stay idle, he threw the fishing line into the sea again, waiting for the fish to bite the bait. In less than a minute, another small tuna fish took the bait. Now Jiang Hai and the others are still in Jiang Hai's sea area. Because Jiang Hai's sea area is too rich in spiritual energy, it attracted a large number of fish. Although some of these fish are cruising around the world, when the fish enter this area, they are reluctant to leave, such as those tuna fish. In addition to these fish, some other fish in the sea will also be reluctant to leave after swimming over and take root here. This is also why Jiang Hai is not worried about the food problem of Big Fool, the 14 dolphins, and his newly collected Roger, king sour squid. Because these foreign species are abnormally rich, it is enough for them to eat. And those large carnivores, such as sharks, are attracted by these foreign species. In front of a king sour squid, a sand tiger shark that is bigger than a great white shark, plus a shark that is also not small, plus 14 dolphins, those sharks have no other choice but to run away. So imagine, when Jiang Hai starts fishing next year, what will his harvest be like? It's a little scary just thinking about it. This kind of small tuna fish is originally a warm and tropical species, but Jiang Hai also has a lot of them. About half an hour or so, Jiang Hai has already caught more than 20 such small tuna fish. Seeing Jiang Hai constantly pulling up the fish, Huang Yunfei and the others also put aside their initial curiosity and wanted to go fishing, but this thing also requires skill. With their mediocre skills, it is not easy to catch these fish. In half an hour, only Fu Yuan, who has fished before, caught a sea bass by sheer luck. But in Jiang Hai's view, this fish should be used as bait because this little guy is too small, about 10 centimeters. But Fu Yuan was so excited that he hugged the fish and took a photo. As a result, he accidentally let the fish jump into the water. Okay, it's almost done. After calculating in his mind, Jiang Hai said after pulling back the last small tuna fish. What? You don't want to fish anymore? Didn't you say that this kind of fish is not delicious? Hearing Jiang Hai say that it's almost done, Dian Yunfei and the others were still not satisfied, but at sea, they would not question Jiang Hai, so they just asked with some doubts. No, you guys go ahead. I mean, these small fish are almost done. These fish are not edible. I will use them to get some edible fish for you. After Jiang Hai finished speaking, he smiled and took back the fishing line. Then he took down the fake bait and scooped up a small tuna. He used his tactical dagger and easily killed the fish with a few cuts. Then he removed the fins and scratched some wounds on them. Then, he picked up the fish, hung it on the hook tied to the fishing line, and threw the line into the sea. After that, they just had to wait. The fish they were going to catch this time were bigger carnivorous fish, which were much more difficult to catch than small tuna fish. Seeing Jiang Hai's actions, although Huang Yunfei and the others didn't say anything, they were all thinking in their hearts. What kind of fish is Jiang Hai trying to catch? But they looked at Jiang Hai suspiciously for a long time, and there was no movement from Jiang Hai's side. Gradually, they stopped paying attention to Jiang Hai's side. But at this moment, Jiang Hai suddenly moved. He quickly put away the fishing line. As soon as they saw Jiang Hai's actions, everyone focused their attention on him. However, they couldn't see what Jiang Hai was trying to pull. When the fishing line was about 3 or 4 meters away from the ship's deck, they could see that on the other end of the fishing line, there was a slender fish, almost a meter long, struggling to pull the line. Fish, what a big fish! Looking at the big fish under the water, LV Jiao couldn't help but exclaim excitedly. Jiang Hai also gestured to everyone, and in an instant, he pulled the fish directly to the platform. After the fish reached the platform, it began to struggle violently, wanting to jump back into the sea, but even so, it didn't open its mouth. Chapter 601. What the hell, what kind of fish is this? It's so big and it looks so fierce. Looking at the struggling fish, Fu Yuan couldn't help but come over and wanted to catch the fish to take a look, but Jiang Hai stopped him one step ahead of him. You don't want your finger, you dare to touch it when you don't know what kind of fish it is. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Fu Yuan was a little confused. Isn't it just a fish? Although it's a little big, it's not big enough to bite off my finger. This is barracuda, also known as sea wolf. Look at these fangs. This fish has a strong vitality and is quite ferocious. If you touch its mouth before it dies, it definitely won't mind tasting human flesh. Looking at everyone's puzzled eyes, Jiang Hai said to them, then he picked up the stick that had been prepared long ago and directly hit the fish to death. Then he opened the fish's mouth and took out the small tuna that had been bitten by it, but there was no way to use it. He directly threw it into the sea to feed the fish. To catch new fish, he needs to change the bait. What the hell, this thing is so fierce? I want to hold it and take a picture. Come on, Su Wei, help me take a picture. Hearing Jiang Hai's introduction, Fu Yuan's eyes couldn't help but shine. He picked up the fish with a serious face and asked Su Wei to take a picture for him with a smile. Of course, after he finished taking pictures, Su Wei, Huang Yunfei, and LV Jiao all took pictures. For them, this fish, which is almost 1.5 meters long, is a big fish. Even if they didn't catch it, they were very happy. After everyone took pictures, they also put the fish in a box full of ice next to them according to Jiang Hai's instructions. According to Jiang Hai, this is called ice fresh, and it will taste good later. After dealing with the fish, Su Wei and the others continued to fish, but they put more of their thoughts on Jiang Hai. They are waiting to see if Jiang Hai can catch more and better fish. This time, they didn't have to wait too long. After about 10 minutes, Jiang Hai began to quickly reel in the line again. As soon as they saw Jiang Hai reel in the line, the people here surrounded him. Jiang Hai's reel in the line was very fast, even faster than the reel in with a fishing rod. Not long after, the other end of the line appeared on the sea level. This time, Jiang Hai didn't catch a barracuda, but a sea bass. It's the same species as the one Fu Yuan caught just now, but it's much worse in size. If Jiang Hai's fish is his grandson, then this fish is his grandfather. Although it hasn't been pulled out of the water yet, the fish on Jiang Hai's side has begun to show its size. The one caught by Fu Yuan is only about 10 centimeters long, but the one caught by Jiang Hai is almost no shorter than the barracuda just now. It's about 1 meter long. Otherwise, it would be impossible to eat a whole small tuna. This fish is not like the barracuda. Its body is slender. This fish looks a bit like the fathead fish. It has a big head, a big mouth, and a wide body. Jiang Hai looked at the fish and without saying a word, he directly threw it on the platform. Then he directly killed it with a stick and lifted the fish up. With this lift, Jiang Hai couldn't help nodding with satisfaction. This fish is less than 1 meter long. It may be a little short. The weight is about 15 kilograms, which is about 30 kilograms. The difference is not big. The barracuda is about 20 kilograms. The two fish are 50 kilograms. After removing the head, the internal organs, and the bones, more than 20 kilograms of meat can be obtained, which is enough for Jiang Hai and others to eat. After all, this is his own fishing ground. Jiang Hai doesn't plan to fish too much. These two fish are enough. After this fish was put on the table, it naturally attracted a large wave of photos and showing off. After everyone took photos, Jiang Hai also poured the rest of the small tuna back into the sea, and then began to clean up with the two fish. Removing the head, bleeding, scraping the scales, and removing the internal organs. After a series of things were done, Jiang Hai also began to deal with the meat. These sea fish have a big bone. Unlike the river fish which have many small burrs, these sea fish don't have many bones. He went up and cut down the back of the fish, and a fish bone was shaved out. Of course, there is still a lot of meat on the fish bone, but Jiang Hai disdains to eat this meat. After staying in the United States for a long time, he has developed the habit of wasting food. Holding 4 fish, Jiang Hai went up to marinate the fish. Because of Jiang Hai, Huang Yunfei and the others didn't want to fish. At least, they didn't want to fish today. After putting away the fishing rod, they went to the upper deck. In the living room, they watched TV, drank beer, and watched Jiang Hai marinate the fish there. This made these 4 people quite happy. The TV in Jiang Hai's yacht is a satellite TV, and it can also be received by domestic stations. Of course, the premise is that it has to be on the satellite. Some local stations can't receive it. Watching Hua Xia on a yacht in the United States, enjoying the sea breeze, drinking beer, and waiting for delicious food, is there anything more beautiful than this? Not long after, Jiang Hai finished marinating the fish. Then, he took a charcoal stove to the deck. Today, they are going to roast the fish. This time, they can't be lazy. They also gathered there and got busy. Those who burned the charcoal, those who took the tables and chairs, and those who cleaned the bowls and chopsticks cleaned the bowls and chopsticks. There is strength in numbers. Not long after, they are almost done. After the charcoal is burned, it needs to be burned for a while before it can be roasted. Jiang Hai and the others also took advantage of this time to take a look at the yacht's steering room. After everything is done, Jiang Hai and the others took the marinated fish and the beef from home to the deck and began to roast. Although these fish are not raised by Jiang Hai, after all, they have absorbed the spiritual energy of Jiang Hai, so when they are roasted, the taste of the meat is quite good. Although it can't be compared to the taste of beef and lobster, in terms of fish alone, the taste of these 2 big fish is already not worse than the general yellowfin golden spear. Of course, the difference in price is very big. However, for Huang Yunfei and the others, these fish are also very delicious. Some words of praise are constantly brushed in his circle of friends. Many people are envious, jealous, and hateful. Of course, what they hate is that they can't replace them to go there to play. Jiang Hai, your life is too corrupt. After taking a sip of beer, Huang Yunfei couldn't help but sigh. In terms of making money, he naturally can't make as much as Jiang Hai, but he is also a person who doesn't lack money. However, compared with his daily work, he is really far behind Jiang Hai. The gap is already not easy to describe with words. Living in such a big villa every day, surrounded by beautiful women, beasts in the mountains, cattle and sheep on the land, seafood in the sea, he can eat whatever he wants. If he is not happy, he will drive the yacht to the sea. At home, he can also ride a horse, play with guns and so on. This kind of life is really enviable to others. A year ago, who would have thought that Jiang Hai would be like this? At that time, These brothers also thought that Jiang Hai's greatest development in the future may be that he may reconcile with Qi Li and then go to Qi Li's company to do something. Who would have thought that he would actually live such a godlike life? After listening to his words, Jiang Hai also chuckled. In fact, not only him, but Jiang Hai also didn't think that he would live such a godlike life one day. But sometimes, things are so sudden. Who would have thought? The group of people had a very happy lunch. If they couldn't eat, they would wash it with water and then throw it directly into the sea. These fish will not be wasted in the sea. After all, they are not going home to feed ornamental fish. There is not much difference between raw and cooked meat. After everything was done, Jiang Hai and the others returned to the dock around 2:00 in the afternoon. Then, they changed to a small boat and went directly to the coral reef. In the afternoon, Jiang Hai arranged for them to snorkel. They certainly can't do real diving. After all, they haven't learned how to do it, and Jiang Hai can't take them. However, it didn't matter if they were snorkeling. Ever since the sea was filled with spirit energy, plankton grew the most. The coral polyps, which fed on plankton, grew faster after eating plankton that contained spirit energy. Since March of this year, Jiang Hai's coral group has almost doubled in size. Now, not only are there many coral groups in the sea about 10 meters deep, but there are also coral groups in the sea between 2 and 5 meters deep. The only pity is that these corals are still mainly gray and not beautiful at all. Jiang Hai has already prepared to wait until next summer to introduce some colorful corals to make his underwater world colorful. Because the waterline on this side of the coral reef is very shallow, large ships can't sail over, but small boats can pass through unimpeded. After Jiang Hai and the others arrived, everyone changed into their respective swimsuits in the cabin. They also prepared glasses and snorkeling tubes. Everything is ready. Jiang Hai also told them what to pay attention to when they go into the water. Scorpions and sea snakes were definitely not to be touched. Jellyfish were definitely not to be touched. Sea anemones were definitely not to be touched. Sea slugs were definitely not to be touched. Colorful fishes were definitely not to be touched. Even if he saw a large reef cave, there might be eels or sharks inside. That was definitely not to be touched. After repeated reminders and confirming all the problems, Jiang Hai and the others went into the water. Looking at the gray coral world on the surface of the water, Jiang Hai didn't feel anything, but Huang Yunfei and the others were very excited. Fortunately, they still remembered Jiang Hai's words to stay away from those dangers. At most, they would chase some small fish to play with. After playing here for about 2 hours, these people climbed onto the boat and returned to the dock, ready to go back for dinner. This was because they had eaten Jiang Hai's food in the past 2 days. Otherwise, with their original weak bodies, they estimated that they couldn't even crawl after playing for 2 hours. They wouldn't be as unsatisfied as they were now. Chapter 602. Jiang, I missed you so much. Dana Taylor threw herself into Jiang Hai's arms and looked at Jiang Hai with an intoxicated expression. Then, without waiting for Jiang Hai to react, she hugged Jiang Hai's neck and kissed him again. Aphrodite did the same. She took the initiative to move her face closer. Although she didn't say it, it was obvious that she missed Jiang Hai very much too. The party with Huang Yunfei and the others ended very early. Although their bodies had changed a little because of eating the things produced in Jiang Hai's manner, the changes were really too little. Therefore, the party ended very early. After 8:00, everyone went to experience Jiang Hai's hot spring and went to bed. When Jiang Hai returned to his room, Aphrodite and Dana had been waiting for a long time. Jiang Hai was a little tired yesterday, so he didn't ask them to come over. But this morning, they had been waiting here. When the three of them met, it was naturally like lightning attracting fire. They were instantly attracted to each other like two polar magnets. Their lips and teeth intertwined, and the temperature between the three of them rose rapidly. There was nothing much to say about what happened next. Unknowingly, the three of them also came to Jiang Hai's white jade bed. Dana was more proactive than Aphrodite. She took off her top in an instant, but when she took off her lower body, she hesitated for a moment. Only then did Jiang Hai notice that Dana was wearing a pair of black stockings on her lower body today. I heard that you like them, so I bought them. Do you want me to wear them? Seeing Jiang Hai's gaze, Dana giggled and looked at Jiang Hai. Hearing what she said, Jiang Hai shook his head. I don't have any special interest in these things. It was hard for him to understand men's love for these stockings. At least, he didn't have any feelings for these things. It was another matter when it was fast, but when there was time to fill it. He preferred the state where both of them were naked. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Dana couldn't help but curl her lips and take off her stockings. She prepared a lot of pairs of stockings for you. Black, white, long tube, suspenders, mesh, all kinds. But I know she's thinking too much. You won't like them. Hearing what Jiang Hai said, Aphrodite couldn't help but laugh. Indeed, compared to Dana, Aphrodite knew Jiang Hai better. Well, let's not care about that. Let's do it. Looking at Dana again, Jiang Hai laughed and pulled her directly into his arms. There was nothing more to say after that. As the saying goes, absence makes the heart grow fonder. Of course, what he needed the most was Aphrodite and Dana. They were very proactive at this time, and Jiang Hai naturally wouldn't be passive. Since he had made up his mind to keep them by his side, there was no need to say anything more. It was that simple. It was a quiet night, but the smell in Jiang Hai's room wasn't very good. As October approached, it was no longer possible to sleep with the windows open at night. And if the windows were closed, the smell wouldn't spread out. Of course, Jiang Hai didn't have to think about this because the next morning, when Aphrodite and Dana left, they would open the windows. When Jiang Hai woke up after 8 in the morning, the air in the room was fresh again. After washing his face and brushing his teeth, Jiang Hai pulled himself together, put on his clothes, and walked downstairs. He found that not many people were awake today. Huang Yunfei and his wife didn't wake up. Only Su Wei and Fu Yuan were awake. The two of them didn't go outside to look at the car. Instead, they stayed in Jiang Hai's living room and looked at Jiang Hai's huge fish tank. When they came the day before yesterday, they had already noticed this fish tank, but they hadn't looked at it carefully. In the end, they couldn't help but be a little surprised when they saw it. Su Wei didn't know much about fish, but he also knew that this should be a golden dragon and a red dragon. Fu Yuan was in the inspection business. He had been to many real estate companies and the like, and business had to pay attention to feng shui. And the feng shui, of course, was to use a fish tank. The fish raised in it were also very particular, and dragons were inevitable. So he roughly knew the price of these arowana. He didn't know the specifics, but he knew that it was definitely worth a lot. I say, when did you raise these fish? Seeing Jiang Hai wobbling down, Fu Yuan immediately asked. Raised them for a month? Looking at these arowana swimming in the water, Jiang Hai thought for a moment and said. A month? Can you raise them so big in a month? Pointing to the fish in the water, Fu Yuan obviously didn't believe it. Are you stupid? I didn't buy babies. Rolling his eyes, Jiang Hai said to him. He didn't say how these arowana came about. After all, it was quite troublesome to explain. You should know that buying and selling arowana is not allowed in the United States. It is illegal. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Fu Yuan froze for a moment, then touched his chin. Indeed, it's not like Jiang Hai can't afford to buy adult arowana. But these things are very expensive. But when he thought of the price of these things, to be honest, he was a little conflicted. Yeah, it's really not cheap. I'm waiting for these arowana to give birth and then sell them back to Huaxia. Looking at the fish in the fish tank, Jiang Hai smiled and muttered. When he first got these fish, he also had the same idea. But what he wants to sell is not the ordinary gold dragon and red dragon. No matter how good the gold dragon and red dragon are, how much can they be worth? Excluding those that had been hyped up, the most expensive red fish that was sold for 2,685 million renminbi was only around 300,000 renminbi. The price of Jiang Hai's cow is equivalent to several red dragons of this level. Moreover, Jiang Hai's cows mature once a year. These red dragons are only worth this price after living for a few years, so it's unrealistic to rely on these things to sell for money. Jiang Hai's target is the platinum dragon. The price of 300,000 renminbi for a baby is Jiang Hai's target. But the other arowana that are born can also be sold. It takes a long time to raise a red dragon that is worth hundreds of thousands of RMB. But generally, he can sell some small fish that are worth tens of thousands to Huaxia. Maybe we can do this business. When the time comes, we can open an aquarium shop. If your arowana are born, let us sell them. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Fu Yuan's eyes suddenly lit up. In any case, Jiang Hai was going to sell his fish, so he might as well buy his fish. Although it is said that good friends are not suitable to do business together, because sooner or later they will fall out. But if it's just a relationship of buying and selling, it doesn't matter. He's just a little dissatisfied with his current job. After the new head of state of the imperial court came to power, many policies were introduced. Their originally lucrative industry was hit hard. Originally, it would not be a problem for him to make 10 to 20,000 yuan a month. But now, he could only make about 10,000 yuan a month after working himself to death. One had to know that he still had to provide for the house. Speaking of which, it was very sad. So it's no wonder that he wants to change careers. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai nodded his head in agreement. It's just some young arowana. Besides, it's not like Fu Yuan doesn't want to pay. He doesn't care about this. Since he wants to open such a shop, he'll give it to him. Anyway, if Jiang Hai's fish give birth, they will be distributed to China. At that time, it doesn't matter if he gives some to Fu Yuan. Seeing Jiang Hai nodding, Fu Yuan couldn't help but look at the fish again. At the same time, he also calculated in his heart. If he wants to open such a shop, how much risk and cost would there be? Looking at his appearance, Jiang Hai and Su Wei didn't disturb him. They went straight into the kitchen and began to prepare breakfast. When breakfast was almost ready, Huang Yunfei and his wife also came downstairs. Seeing that breakfast was ready, they didn't wait. They asked Fu Yuan to set up the table and tableware together. Then, it was time to eat breakfast. Today's breakfast is still more Western. Because Jiang Hai is very lazy, and Chinese food is more or less troublesome. Cheddar soup, bread, and sausages. But in addition, there is also milk. This milk is not bought outside, but produced in Jiang Hai's manor. When he bought cows last time, Jiang Hai specially bought a few Holstein cows, which are black and white Holstein cows. 2 of them are about to give birth. In less than half a month after returning, these 2 cows gave birth. The cows that gave birth to calves can produce milk. Jiang Hai also specially bought a set of milk production equipment for this. Of course, the milk that is directly squeezed out can't be drunk. It can only be drunk after it is mixed with hot water. But these are all left to Robbins Garcia. Robbins Garcia was an out-and-out old cowboy. He knew a lot about beef cattle, and he wasn't lacking in milk cows. Every day, he would mix fresh milk. However, the milk production of 2 cows was enough to supply everyone in the manor. It wasn't enough to sell. Jiang Hai originally bought these cows for himself to drink milk, so he didn't think about selling them. There is a beef cattle economy, but milk cows? Jiang Hai doesn't care about making money. After eating an authentic Winthrop breakfast, everyone packed up. Jiang Hai took them to visit the town. Sitting on Jiang Hai's war shield, the group went directly to the town. At this time, the weather has turned cold. Winthrop, which was very popular a few months ago, has become a lot quieter recently. But there are still many tourists who have not left. Although they can't drink water now, the seafood is much more delicious than it was in the beginning. The mid-autumn crab fat is also the same in the United States. Seeing Jiang Hai's war shield driving into the town, not only will the people in the town take the initiative to greet Jiang Hai, but the tourists will also come over to get a discount from Jiang Hai. Now, most of the people who come here to play are here to eat seafood, and Jiang Hai's seafood is famous here. It will not be wrong to get close to Jiang Hai. Along the way, the original half-hour drive took nearly an hour to arrive. But fortunately, they finally arrived. After parking the car in the town's parking lot, Jiang Hai took his friends for a stroll. Chapter 603. Wow, the economy here is really developed. They walked into the central district of the town, which was the commercial street. Speaking of which, other than this place, there was no other famous place in the town. As soon as they walked in, Huang Yunfei's wife couldn't take her eyes off of it. Women always have an abnormal obsession with shopping, and no one can stop them. Not to mention, this street was full of foreign products that were very good for her, so naturally, she couldn't take her eyes off of it. Your style is not right. I thought it was the same as on the way here, a rural town in the United States. Where did so many shops come from? However, compared to Huang Yunfei's wife, Huang Yunfei was a little scared. He didn't know the price of these shops, but Chinese people always subconsciously feel that foreign products should be very expensive. Although it's not that he couldn't afford it, he still felt a little sorry for his wallet. Now Winthrop is also a tourist attraction, so it can be considered a shopping street. However, although there seems to be a lot of things here, the prices are very cheap. These clothes are basically dozens of dollars, which is only a few $100s when converted to RMB, but the quality is much better than the hundreds of dollars in China. The basketball shoes over there are also very cheap. The James 13 basketball shoes sell for $1,599 in China, but on the official website here, the normal color matching shoes are only $200, and the special color matching shoes are only $245, which is more than $300 cheaper. It's even cheaper here. I saw it a few days ago. It seems to be $170, and they are all produced in the United States. The quality is better than the ones produced in South Vietnam. Looking at Huang Yunfei's stingy look, Jiang Hai also explained with a smile. Upon hearing Jiang Hai's words, Huang Yunfei and the others were stunned for a moment. To be honest, they originally thought that the shoes and clothes here would definitely not be cheap, but they didn't expect that the price was actually very affordable. No wonder there were so many people shopping here. Nearly half of the shops here belong to me, but I've rented them out. If you want to buy anything, you can buy it. The quality of the Western ginseng is better than that in China, and the price is not expensive. Generally, a 20-year-old wild Western ginseng is about $100. The ginseng is sold by the Iroquois, which is a branch of the Native Americans. It's all authentic. There are also some small accessories, which are all very good. Maple syrup is also a must when you go back, and that's for your parents. As for the clothes here, it's up to you. If you want to buy iPads, that's fine too. However, this time, they were just here to shop. If they wanted to buy something, they would have to wait until they were about to leave. Now was not the time to buy things. After shopping for about 2 hours, Jiang Hai took them to the Italian restaurant that he used to frequent. Unexpectedly, the Italian restaurant, which was only good at first, was overcrowded at this time. A large number of local tourists and Huaxia tourists gathered here. In fact, it also proved that the shop owner's cooking skills were really good. Otherwise, it would be impossible to attract so many people. The shop owner was very happy about this. When he saw Jiang Hai coming over, he was naturally very enthusiastic. He deliberately led Jiang Hai to a private room at the side. In fact, the private room was something that he had just recently set up because Huaxia people liked it. Otherwise, he wouldn't have had such a thing here before. Since Jiang Hai brought his friends to support him, the Italian boss naturally used his mixing technique and made an authentic Italian cuisine. To be honest, if Jiang Hai's parents were to eat this sweet and sour food, they would probably be depressed to death. Because their generation didn't like to eat this kind of taste, but Jiang Hai and the others tasted good. Everyone was quite satisfied with the lunch. When they checked out, they realized that the meal had only cost them $30, which was less than 200 yuan. Su Wei and the others were filled with emotion at the price. After lunch, the group of 5 left the restaurant. According to the original plan, they were going to the gun shop in the afternoon. The gun shop was in the town. After Jiang Hai and the others walked out of the commercial area, they went to the gun shop. But halfway through, they found that Mayor Wallace was walking around the town with some guys in suits and ties. Those people walked for a while and stopped to take photos of the nearby area. At the same time, Jiang Hai also noticed the helplessness on Mayor Wallace's face. Seeing this scene, Jiang Hai felt a little strange. Who could make the local tyrant Mayor Wallace unhappy? Mayor. Thinking of this, Jiang Hai waved at Mayor Wallace. Hearing Jiang Hai's voice, Mayor Wallace also looked over. When he saw that it was Jiang Hai, a hint of excitement flashed in his eyes. When did you come back? Seeing that Jiang Hai was here, Mayor Wallace said a few words to the people around him, then quickly walked to Jiang Hai's side and said to Jiang Hai with a smile. This time, with Jiang Hai here, things may be much easier to handle. I just came back, what's the situation? Hearing Mayor Wallace's words, Jiang Hai asked strangely. Hey, you were gone for half a month, something happened in the town. Looking at Jiang Hai, Mayor Wallace sighed. What's the matter? Looking at Mayor Wallace's appearance, Jiang Hai's brows wrinkled. He looked at the people who came over with a bad expression. They are people from Celanese company. They want to build a factory here. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Mayor Wallace said helplessly. At the same time, looking at the people behind him, he was also a little speechless. Celanese? Hearing Mayor Wallace's words, Jiang Hai was a little confused. He had never heard of this company. Hello, my name is Peter *********, the head of the logistics department of Celanese company. This time, I came to your town mainly to choose a factory site. Seeing that Mayor Wallace was so excited when he saw Jiang Hai, the leader of Celanese company, a middle-aged white man, also knew that Jiang Hai should have a lot of influence in this town, so he took the initiative to introduce him. Hello, Jiang Hai, but I don't quite understand what you are talking about. Looking at the hand that reached over, Jiang Hai also shook his hand, then frowned and said with some confusion. To put it simply, our company has taken a fancy to the location of your town. The location of your town is still very good. It is very close to Boston and also very close to the airport. It can also be transported by sea. It can cover the eastern part of the United States and can also be sold overseas, so our company has decided to start production and build a factory here. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Peter also gave a brief introduction, but Jiang Hai was still confused because he didn't know what this Celanese company was about. Celanese is a chemical company. It is most famous for manufacturing chemical products, not allowed to write, and the like. It is also a manufacturer of high-performance engineering plastics. Looking at Jiang Hai's puzzled eyes, Mayor Wallace couldn't help but whisper to Jiang Hai. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai frowned instantly. Mayor, are you crazy? Why would our town recruit a chemical manufacturer to invest in it? Don't you want our land and ocean? Looking at Mayor Wallace in front of him, Jiang Hai's face was not very friendly, and he said with a questioning face. Oh, I think Mr. Jiang Hai has misunderstood us. The chemical products produced by our company are famous all over the world. Although our company is a chemical company, the products we produce do not pollute the atmosphere, water resources, and land. The U.S. government can testify for us. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Peter hurriedly said. Pollution was a very serious topic abroad, but in this world, there was nothing that money couldn't solve, right? A chemical company saying that its products would not pollute the land, atmosphere, and water resources, who would believe it? As for what the government said, those who would believe it were pure fools. Whether others believed it or not, Jiang Hai did not believe it anyway. No matter what the mayor decides, I will never agree to let you in. It's as simple as that. Looking at Peter in front of him who was still trying to persuade him, Jiang Hai directly waved his hand and forcefully interrupted his words. Hearing Jiang Hai's tough words, the other party could not help but shrug and turn his head helplessly. But Jiang Hai noticed that when he turned his head, a trace of killing intent flashed in his eyes, but he hid it very well and was not discovered by Jiang Hai. I'll talk to you about this in the evening. Well, you should accompany your friend first. Seeing that Jiang Hai's words had dropped the atmosphere to the freezing point, Mayor Wallace stood up and tried to smooth things over. Hearing Mayor Wallace's words, Jiang Hai thought for a moment and did not say much. He believed that Mayor Wallace was not stupid. He should be able to understand the purpose of these people's arrival. Would they not pollute just because they said they would not pollute? Chemical factories, even if one were to think with their toes, would cause a lot of damage. Perhaps for ordinary people, the damage was still acceptable, but for Jiang Hai, it was absolutely unacceptable. He chose this place because of the good environment. If these factories moved in now, it would be a huge threat to Jiang Hai's upgrade. He could not let these people enter Winthrop no matter what. After glancing at these people, Jiang Hai nodded to Mayor Wallace. They would talk about it in the evening. Then, he took Fu Yuan and the others to the shooting range in the distance. Seeing Jiang Hai and the others leave, the people of Celanese narrowed their eyes. Everyone, this way please. Like I said, I don't have the slightest bit of confidence in you all moving in here. My townspeople aren't idiots to that extent. Looking at those people, Mayor Wallace spoke again. Chapter 604. What's the matter? Walking over with Jiang Hai, Huang Yunfei whispered to Jiang Hai. Although Jiang Hai and the others were speaking in English, they were also confused. But looking at the atmosphere just now, they felt that something was wrong. Nothing, those people are from a chemical factory and want to build a factory here. Hearing Huang Yunfei's words, Jiang Hai was also thinking about what was going on at this time, so he said casually. Build a factory? Isn't that a good thing? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Su Wei and Fu Yuan also came over. A good thing? How can you tell that it's a good thing? Seeing these people's expressions, Jiang Hai was stunned. Is this a good thing? Of course, if a factory is built here, it will need workers, and it will solve the problem of making money for the people in the town. And the factory will naturally pay taxes for its profits. With the tax and the political system here in the United States, the money can be used to help the town increase its welfare and public facilities. Isn't this a good thing? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Huang Yunfei couldn't help but say. What they said was actually reported in the domestic news. In China, if a small town, a small village, attracted investment and got a factory, it would be a big deal. Not only would it solve the problem of jobs for the people here, but it could also generate income for the local area. This is an out-and-out good thing. People in China are racking their brains to get the factory set up. Why does it look like Jiang Hai doesn't want this factory to open? What the hell is this? Are you mistaken? This is a chemical factory, a chemical factory. Hearing their words, Jiang Hai almost laughed out of anger. I heard them. Didn't they say they are from Celanese? I know this company. It mainly makes acetic acid, which is plastic. The toxicity of this thing is not too high. The environmental damage of this factory is okay. At least it is much better than paper factories, fertilizer factories, agricultural pharmaceutical factories, etc. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Huang Yunfei waved his hand indifferently. Hearing their words, Jiang Hai was so angry that he laughed. If this happened in China, indeed, a plastic factory would not cause a big backlash, but if this is the case, then why did Jiang Hai come to the United States? Isn't it fine in China? Coming here was for a particularly clean environment. Winthrop's side was like a piece of white paper. If a drop of ink were to touch it, it would turn into a paste. In the eyes of the people in the country, the impact of the factory was not big, but Jiang Hai was completely unacceptable. It doesn't make sense to you. Winthrop's main focus is on the ecological environment. There is no environmental pollution at all. As long as I am here, no chemical factory can open here. Hearing Huang Yunfei's words, Jiang Hai said clearly. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the few people here laughed. You are too serious. How is there no chemical factory? According to you, without these chemical factories, where would the plastic and paper come from? Where would the fertilizer and pesticides come from? Where would those chemical products come from? As long as they emit according to the standards, it will be fine. Indeed, for the people of China, making money is the most important thing. With the recent increase in awareness of environmental protection, the concept of environmental protection was raised. But environmental protection is not as important as money. No matter how little a chemical factory emits, it will still cause pollution. In China, these pollution will not attract much attention. This is also a negative situation brought about by the rapid development of society. It is the same in China now. When the US was developing rapidly, it was even worse than China. The economy was developing rapidly, but the land, air, rivers, and water were all polluted. The US spent decades to clean up the pollution. Now, only these rural areas had reached the most suitable state for human habitation. Some rich people, under such circumstances, also drank water imported from Northern Europe. They don't want to drink water from the US. This shows the impact of pollution on the environment. Some people might say that setting up a factory here will not cause too much pollution in the short term. After a few years of making money, they can close down the factory. This is a win-win situation. But Jiang Hai cannot accept this. The reason he came here was because the spirit qi here was increasing very quickly. He couldn't tolerate the slightest bit of pollution here. Indeed, just as Huang Yunfei had said, this world definitely needed plastic. These things would be built anywhere. Even if they were not built here, they would have to be built elsewhere. If they were built here, it would increase and stimulate the development of the local area. But Jiang Hai will absolutely, definitely, 10,000% not agree. This is a matter of principle. Okay, Winthrop must be maintained in a pure state. I can allow this place to become a tourist attraction, but I will never allow a chemical factory to be built here. So needless to say, I will definitely not allow this thing to be built. I can't tolerate the existence of pollution. Jiang Hai waved his hand and interrupted Huang Yunfei's words. He directly defined this matter. Hey, you've been abroad for a year. You're really getting more and more sentimental. This is not a big deal in China, but it's quite troublesome here. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Huang Yunfei touched his nose and said with a smile. In fact, this matter had nothing to do with him. He was just casually talking about it. Seeing that Jiang Hai had already made a decision, he chose to shut up. Afterwards, the group of 5 went to the shooting range. Jiang Hai also had a stake in the shooting range, and it wasn't a small amount. Seeing that Jiang Hai had personally come, the shop assistants here were naturally very polite. They helped Huang Yunfei choose a gun and then taught them how to use it step by step. Naturally, this led to a wave of photos. These were all real guns. Except for Fu Yuan, other people have no chance to touch these real guns. Now that they touched them, it was really awesome. Even Huang Yunfei's wife, LV Jiao, was satisfied after shooting 5 magazines. But watching them shoot, Jiang Hai didn't play with them. First, because he doesn't care about these things now, and second, because he is still thinking about the chemical factory. Jiang Hai also listened to what Huang Yunfei said, although he will never let pollution enter Winthrop. However, the townspeople of Winthrop might not think that way. Although they were earning a lot more than before, no one would feel that having too much money was a problem. Huang Yunfei represented the thinking of the majority of the people. Since the government had said that the plastic produced by these people was not toxic, then they would subconsciously think that there was no pollution and that they could still make money without pollution. That was the best choice. In China, public opinion was very important, not to mention in the United States where human rights were constantly mentioned. It seems that Mayor Wallace, a sensible person, sometimes can't make the decision in the town, especially when many people are interested in this thing. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so excited to see me today. It seems that if I want to drive this company out, I have to rely on Jiang Hai's momentum. Thinking of this, Jiang Hai's heart couldn't help but sink. It seems that the other party may have come prepared. But in any case, Jiang Hai will definitely not let these people open the factory. This is not Jiang Hai's style. Everything will wait until Mayor Wallace comes in the evening. He will probably give Jiang Hai a satisfactory answer. After playing with guns here, the night quietly covered Winthrop town. Jiang Hai didn't go back for dinner today. Instead, he went to a burrito shop to let Huang Yunfei and the others try the authentic South American flavor. To be honest, they liked the sour, sweet, and spicy taste. After having a good meal, Jiang Hai drove back to his manor. At this time, in the manor, Bernice, Xiaoya, and the others have already eaten dinner. Huang Yunfei and the others have been running for the whole day. In the afternoon, they have been standing there shooting, so they are already a little tired. After taking a bath in the hot spring, they went back to their room to rest. Of course, they didn't necessarily sleep because there is internet, TV, and everything in the room. They can also lie on the bed to play. As for Jiang Hai, he laid on his white jade recliner. He remembered that Mayor Wallace said that he will come in the evening, so he is waiting for him. Mayor Wallace didn't let Jiang Hai wait for too long. At about 8:30 in the evening, his car also appeared in front of Jiang Hai's manor. Jiang Hai opened the door and let Mayor Wallace drive the car over. The car stopped. Looking at Jiang Hai sitting there, Mayor Wallace couldn't help but slow down his footsteps, but he still slowly walked over. He picked up a bottle of beer that Jiang Hai put next to him, opened it, and sat on another recliner, looking up at the starry sky while drinking beer. Looking at Mayor Wallace, Jiang Hai finally couldn't hold back and asked him, "Didn't you have something to tell me?" "Originally, I had something to tell you, but after seeing you, it's nothing. Because I know that even if the whole town goes crazy, you won't go crazy. And most importantly, the cards in your hands are much more important than that company." Looking at Jiang Hai, Mayor Wallace said with a smile, "Can you tell me what happened?" Hearing the old fox's words, Jiang Hai sighed. He knew what the old guy was talking about. Now, Jiang Hai and the town of Winthrop were closely related. Many people in Winthrop relied on Jiang Hai to eat. Not to mention his employees, those tourists from Huaxia were recruited by him. As long as he wanted, he could stop the tourists. The shooting range over there, the seaside villa, half of the shops on the commercial street, as long as Jiang Hai wanted, he could directly turn Winthrop from a new tourist town to its original state in an instant. And Jiang Hai could afford this money, but the townspeople couldn't. So even if it was to earn this money, the townspeople would do whatever Jiang Hai said. This was inevitable. From this point of view, Jiang Hai's influence had already surpassed that of Mayor Wallace. This was also the fundamental reason why Mayor Wallace was so calm. With Jiang Hai, they were already in an invincible position. Chapter 605. However, even if Jiang Hai stood firmly on this side, he still had to know what was going on. It all started a week ago. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Mayor Wallace also took a sip of beer, then raised his head, looked at the stars in the night, and told Jiang Hai about it. This matter was mainly because of three people, Faraday Kirk, Hewley Kirk, and Augustine Wilson. Speaking of these three people, Jiang Hai also knew them. Faraday Kirk was Mayor Wallace's brother. He worked in the Boston Tourism Bureau and had a high position. When Winthrop wanted to apply to become a tourist attraction, he made things difficult for Wallace. Hewley Kirk was Faraday Kirk's son. When he wanted to pursue Scheitclive in the town, he was taught a lesson by Jiang Hai. For this person, Jiang Hai did not have a deep impression because he had only seen him once. The last person, Augustine Wilson, Jiang Hai still had a slight impression of him. He had met this person once a year ago. This person had a younger brother named Faraday Wilson. It seemed that there were quite a lot of bad guys named Faraday. Faraday Wilson used to work with Bunny and Wallen, the younger brother of Billy Wallen, whom Jiang Hai killed. The two of them once dealt with Jiang Hai. It was the first crisis Jiang Hai encountered after he came here, but these people were all sent to prison by Jiang Hai in the end. It was also because Jiang Hai was not so strong at that time. Otherwise, these people would not be in prison, but directly disappear from the world. Jiang Hai did not want to let go of these people who were a threat to him. There would be a day when they would be released from prison, so he preferred to strangle the danger in the cradle. Don't talk to him about the law or justice. Jiang Hai would not listen to these. He only knew that someone wanted to harm him, so he would kill him. However, even if these people didn't die, they wouldn't be able to come out for more than 10 years. Augustine Wilson was originally Faraday Wilson's brother. After Faraday's accident, he could no longer stay in this town. Later, he went to Boston, but after the first time the people in Boston found trouble with Jiang Hai, he fled. Perhaps he was afraid that Jiang Hai would catch him, so he fled far away and went to the central part of the United States, Texas. His original idea for coming here was very simple. He just wanted to rely on his cowboy skills to find a job here. However, after coming here, he realized what Texas did not lack the most. There was no shortage of cowboys. He was one of the top 100 in Winthrop, and he would be one of the last few in any town. Unable to find a job as a cowboy, he was finally hired by the Celanese Company, which was originally based in Texas. Later, the company wanted to expand its business in the East, and it would be best to find a port city. However, the company's current annual turnover was only about $5.9 billion. It was a lot of income, but for a company, it was not enough to easily find a piece of land in the eastern coastal area, where every inch of land was worth an inch of gold. Therefore, their initial target was New Jersey and Massachusetts. However, after their proposal was submitted, New Jersey directly rejected it. They could not easily let a chemical factory enter. If it was a local factory, it might be possible, but definitely not a foreign one. Massachusetts also rejected it because it was a chemical factory. However, compared to New Jersey, Massachusetts was not too tough. Therefore, the company went to do some public relations. In the end, Hewlett Kirk, who received the money, told his father about it. His father also wanted to take revenge on Winthrop, so he convinced the authorities that Winthrop might be able to do it. When the company's people arrived at Winthrop, they found that it was really suitable, so they told Mayor Wallace. Mayor Wallace naturally rejected it directly, but they did not give up. Later, they dug out Augustine Wilson, who was also from Winthrop, to persuade his fellow villagers. They wanted the people of Winthrop to believe that their chemical factory was not toxic and had no side effects. It would only be a positive development for the local economy, and there would be no vicious cycle. Although there were many commoners who didn't completely believe it, they also wanted to do as Huang Yunfei said. They wanted to let the factory be built first so that they could earn more money. If it really had an impact in the future, they could just close it down and rebuild it. It was precisely because of the townspeople's thinking that Mayor Wallace, who had rejected it very straightforwardly, felt helpless. Because some townspeople went to the town hall to make a scene, wanting to increase their income. Although Mayor Wallace was the local tyrant here, his power was not given by the American government, but by the local people. The people could elect him, but they could also dismiss him. It was precisely because of this that even though he made it clear that he didn't support them, the other party still sent a delegation to negotiate. He had to go along with them to deal with them, which led to the scene that Jiang Hai saw today. Hearing Mayor Wallace's words, Jiang Hai's fingernails gently tapped on the chair. So, there's a traitor among us? Looking at the stars in the sky, Jiang Hai did not want to see these things one day, but once the chemical factory was opened, who knew what would happen? At least, Jiang Hai would never agree to it. Traitor? It seems a bit overboard, but those people are really hateful. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Mayor Wallace could not help but feel a little conflicted. The culture of Huaxia and the culture of the United States were completely different. For example, in Huaxia, being captured during a war was a stain in one's life, and it could not be washed away. But in the United States, captives were allowed during a war. For example, Andrew Jackson, who was once captured, later became the 7th President of the United States. Therefore, the gap between Huaxia and the United States was very big. In China, if something like this happened, it was not an exaggeration to call those people traitors. But in the United States, it was just people with different ideas, and no one would even blame them. This was the reality. But in the face of absolute power, what they say is useless. Tomorrow, you spread some news, saying that I will never allow any chemical factory to enter Winthrop's territory. If they enter, I will withdraw all the funds for the construction of Winthrop, close the shooting range, cut off the passage for Huaxia tourists, and close the commercial street and seaside villas. As for who to support, it depends on the people in the town. However, Jiang Hai was not someone who would smooth things over. Although these things were very common in the United States, the better way was to be soft. The Americans had always been very tough to outsiders, but they had always been very soft to their own people. But Jiang Hai was different. He was going to be tough to the end, and he would not agree to it. Let's see who the townspeople will support. If he was pushed too far, he could just move away. Although he had built this place for a year and had a lot of feelings for it, his ability to make a fortune came from the true dragon's essence in his body, not these external things. If he left, it would not take long for him to create a second or third Winthrop. But if he left, Winthrop would only become a dilapidated town, even if it had a chemical factory. You don't have to do this. Although I admit that there will be some pollution with a chemical factory, it shouldn't be to this extent, right? Sometimes, young people are too impulsive. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Mayor Wallace was shocked. Although he really did not want this chemical factory to enter Winthrop, he could not do anything. But if the arm can't twist the thigh, then he will turn a blind eye. At most, he will arrange the location of the factory to be further away. But he didn't think that Jiang Hai would directly say such a thing. Then the townspeople will have to make a choice. In the end, they will choose Jiang Hai and live a comfortable life, or they will choose the chemical factory. No, there are some things that I can't explain to you. I can only say that I can only live in a world with almost no pollution. If Winthrop is no longer where I want to rest, then I will sell everything here and find another suitable place for me to live. There are some things that Jiang Hai can't say. Pollution will slow down the growth of his scales. This is the most unacceptable thing for him, especially after he received the benefits of the scales and aura. If this place is not good, then Jiang Hai can only choose to go to other places. There is nothing to discuss, this is an absolute bottom line problem. Well, okay, I will release the news tomorrow. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Mayor Wallace could not help but be speechless. Originally, he came to discuss with Jiang Hai, but he did not expect that he would unknowingly find out such news. If the town wants to build a chemical factory, then will Jiang Hai leave? Looking at Jiang Hai's appearance, he did not seem to be lying, he was very serious. If he had to choose between the chemical factory and Jiang Hai, Mayor Wallace would definitely choose Jiang Hai. And he also believed that as long as the townspeople were not stupid, they would definitely choose Jiang Hai. After all, everyone knew that Winthrop's current situation was due to Jiang Hai. If Jiang Hai leaves, then what's the use of having a chemical factory? Going to work there would at most let their families earn more money. If they wanted to really make money, the most important thing was to travel. No one would be stupid enough to think that working in a factory would make more money than now. After a few more words with Jiang Hai, Mayor Wallace drove his car again and left Jiang Hai's manor, returning to his home in the town. Jiang Hai continued to look at the stars in the sky, only hoping that things would not go to the worst step. At this time, in the most luxurious villa in the row of seaside villas built by Jiang Hai, Peter, whom Jiang Hai met today, was now discussing the situation here with his team. Among the people in suits, there was also a more casual person. This person was none other than Augustine Wilson, but at this time, he was much more decadent than a year ago. Chapter 606. If that Jiang Hai clearly doesn't support us, then this matter is really a bit troublesome. Sitting on the sofa in the room, a middle-aged man who met Jiang Hai today pulled his tie and said gloomily. To be honest, the current situation of chemical factories was really quite awkward. Except for some established local industries, most developed countries would absolutely not allow new chemical factories to build in their own territory. This included countries in Europe and some countries in Asia. The only countries that could build factories with confidence were third world countries, including some countries in Southeast Asia and Africa. But the problem was that building a factory there would not be enough local consumption, so it would need to be shipped out. Just the tariffs on both sides and all kinds of miscellaneous expenses were enough to give Celanese a headache. They were only a small company with an annual income of $5.9 billion. They did not care if they were not a top company like Dow Chemical. Dow Chemical was more powerful than DuPont Group, but they could not, so it was best for them to choose a place in the United States to build a factory. The United States was definitely a developed country, but its uniqueness was that it was not a complete collection of countries. Instead, each state had its own independent government. It was precisely because of this that they could take advantage of a loophole. If one state did not allow it, another state might allow it. Now they had a good coverage in the central region. They were just waiting to open up the eastern market. They were still very interested in the eastern market. And they absolutely did not want to think about New York. They could not afford to build a factory. New Jersey directly told them that it was impossible. The only possible place was Massachusetts, which was their final target. So no matter what, they would not easily let go of this place. Even if the richest man and the mayor here had already told them that they did not support them, they were still prepared to try. They would not let go of even the slightest chance. Since they wanted to build a factory here, they must have already known the situation here. They naturally knew how important Jiang Hai was in the hearts of the residents here. If Mayor Wallace objected, they were 70% sure that they could build the factory. But if Jiang Hai objected, they might only have about 20%. It was undeniable that now in this town, Jiang Hai's status had already surpassed Mayor Wallace, because the lives of Jiang Hai and these townspeople were closely related. The townspeople counted on Jiang Hai to make money. If they fought with Jiang Hai head-on, the result might not be good. What do you think about this Jiang Hai? Looking at the people in front of him, Peter, who was now the nominal supreme commander of this team, gently knocked on his chair and asked them. Hearing the leader's words, a young man here thought for a moment and said, if we want to conquer this place, this Jiang Hai is a big problem. I suggest we try to bribe him with money. In fact, not only in China, but also abroad, there were naturally some shady money, but because the punishment for accepting bribes was very strict here, for example, if someone bribed someone, this person could accept the money first and then report him. In this way, not only could he get the money, but he would also get the money that this person gave him. This person would also have to go to prison and not have to do anything for him. For example, if someone bribed Jiang Hai with $10,000, Jiang Hai could accept the money and then report this person for bribing him. He could keep the $10,000, and this person would have to pay him another $10,000. Then this person would have to go to prison, and Jiang Hai would not have to do anything for him. This was the bribery punishment mechanism in the United States. It maximized the distrust between the two parties who accepted bribes, so this kind of thing would naturally be reduced a lot. You're from here. Does this Jiang Hai care about money? Hearing this young man's proposal, Peter did not speak directly. Instead, he looked at Augustine Wilson. This guy was a spy among the townspeople. In my opinion, it's not very possible, because this Jiang Hai is much richer than you think. On the surface, his manor is worth $280 million. Last year, he sold 10,000 cows. I heard that he sold them for more than $1 billion. I'm not very clear about the specific amount of money, but next year, he will pay taxes. It's almost a few $100 million, so even if he can be bribed, it's not the result we want. Looking at Peter, Augustine Wilson hesitated and said. What he said was the truth. Although he also hated Jiang Hai, he could not ignore Jiang Hai's achievements. Hiss. Hearing Augustine Wilson's words, the people here could not help but gasp. Originally, they thought that Jiang Hai was just an ordinary rich man, but they did not expect that he was a billionaire. Perhaps in terms of total assets, he was not as good as Celanese Company, but don't forget that Jiang Hai owned it alone. He earned more than $1 billion a year, but Celanese Company was not theirs. They could not get so much money. For them, spending money was about a few $100,000, but now hundreds of thousands, or even millions, were nothing more than pocket money in Jiang Hai's eyes. This was troublesome. If spending money doesn't work, then what's the other way? Looking at the crowd, Peter directly rejected the idea of spending money and said to the crowd. Hearing his words, the people here looked at each other and hesitated. After a while, a middle-aged white man stood up and said to the crowd, I have an idea. We may be able to drive a wedge between Jiang Hai and the townspeople. After all, Jiang Hai is a Huaxia. Go on. Hearing his words, Peter did not say much and just looked at him. Seeing Peter's encouraging eyes, the middle-aged man also said, We all know that although there is no racial discrimination in the United States now, racial discrimination has always been there. After all, Jiang Hai is an Asian, and he has not become a naturalized citizen of the United States. So we may be able to start from this aspect and let the townspeople discriminate against Jiang Hai. This is not suitable because these people in the town are not fools. They know that their current lives have changed because of Jiang Hai. Jiang Hai invested in building the town and attracted tourists. Without Jiang Hai, there would be no new town and tourists. They probably would not rebel against Jiang Hai. But before this person finished speaking, he was interrupted by another person. Although it seemed that this strategy was vicious, people in the world were not fools, especially when it came to money. We can send people to lobby these townspeople and tell them that without Jiang Hai, they can also get these things. Jiang Hai is just using them to make money. He is a vampire attached to these people. But obviously, this person did not want to give up his strategy easily and said loudly to the crowd. Well, Maud, your idea is a bit too radical. As Carl said, the people here are not fools. They will believe what you said. Maybe they will in the future, but now they are still very clear-headed. However, the strategy you said is not completely useless. Waving his hand, Peter signaled the somewhat excited middle-aged man to calm down. Then he touched his chin and pondered. It was inevitable that they would not be able to compete with Jiang Hai in terms of money, whether it was Jiang Hai's own money or the people's money. They knew how important the tourism industry was to the development of the town. Even if a chemical plant attracted all the people in the town, how much income could this kind of occupation earn? It was poisonous and had side effects. $5,000 a month was already the limit of their company. That way, they could earn $60,000 a year. But now, they didn't have to work too hard, and they could earn more than $100,000 a year. For them, the chemical plant was a revenue-generating project, not a necessary project like tourism. Unless there was something wrong with their heads, they wouldn't want to compete for it. The United States was different from Huaxia. Finding a job in Huaxia was a serious matter, but the tourism industry was not so serious. But this was the United States, and there was no such thing as a serious job. If you could make money and not break the law, it was the best choice. Looking at the people in front of him, Peter also said, "We can do this." Hearing Peter's words, the people here could not help but light up. This might be a good idea. After deciding on this plan, most of the people in this team went back to rest. preparing for the attack tomorrow. But there was one person who stayed in Peter's room. This person was also a member of the delegation. But usually, he never took the initiative to talk. He always stayed in the corner, and few people noticed him. If Belle, Azalina, and the others were here, they would be very vigilant against this guy. If this plan doesn't work, then we'll have to rely on you. Do you understand? Looking at this person, Peter whispered. Hearing what he said, this person nodded faintly and then left the room. Jiang Hai, let's see if you can stop us. After everyone left, Peter looked at the starry sky outside and then said with a chuckle. For him, this kind of thing was already a piece of cake. When the sun rose the next day, two news slowly spread in the town almost at the same time. The first news was from the town hall. It was said that Mayor Wallace went to Jiang Hai last night. Jiang Hai said very clearly that he absolutely did not support any chemical company to enter the town. If a chemical company entered the town, then he would withdraw from Winthrop and close all the shops related to him. The other news was Chapter 607. Jiang Hai won't leave this place. If he wants to leave, where can he find such a good place? The only reason he can make money is because of his ranch. If he leaves, where can he find such a good ranch? You've all been fooled by him. If he leaves, how can he make money? Winthrop is his tool to make money. He won't leave. Does Winthrop belong to him? If he wants to leave, let him go. We'll pay again and rebuild the things he built. It's not like we can't afford it. At most, we'll get a loan from the city government. We're a high-quality enterprise here. That's right. Think about it. Who's the most profitable person in Winthrop now? It's Jiang Hai. He's a businessman. A businessman is most particular about making money. Being able to make money is the most important thing. Don't you understand? The reason he doesn't let Celanese in is not because of pollution. He just wants to tie all your income to him. That way, he'll be the local tyrant here. Don't you understand that? When Jiang Hai wanted to withdraw his investment, some people who had nothing to do in Winthrop began to spread another version of the story. They said that Jiang Hai was reluctant to leave because he also needed to make money. This made the townspeople who were originally nervous when they heard the news calm down a lot. Indeed, they were not stupid. They could choose not to believe those who slandered Jiang Hai. As for those who said that Jiang Hai should leave, there were not many who believed it. If Jiang Hai left, where could they find tourists from Huaxia? After all, these people were the main force here. The local tourists, whether in terms of quantity or quality, the amount of money spent, were far inferior to the tourists from Huaxia. Jiang Hai definitely could not leave. They would not let Jiang Hai leave no matter what. After living a good life for a few months, they did not want to go back to their original life. Therefore, Jiang Hai definitely could not leave. However, whether Jiang Hai really wanted to leave or was just scaring them remained to be seen. Although Winthrop was not in an uproar, most people were watching. However, they all knew one thing. Jiang Hai and Mayor Wallace were the same. They did not support the chemical factory's move. They did not feel that he was that tough. Originally, 60% of the people supported the establishment of the chemical plant. After all, no one didn't want their family to be able to generate income. Another 20% of the people didn't care. Only less than 20% of the people supported Mayor Wallace. However, after today's incident, the people who supported Jiang Hai also supported Mayor Wallace. In an instant, more than 50% of the people supported the chemical factory's move. Almost 60% of the people did not support the chemical factory's move. Because of Jiang Hai's words, the people who supported the factory's move were reduced to 40%. Less than 10% of the people did not care. For a moment, the situation on Celanese's side was not very good. However, what was surprising was that Celanese people mainly used the idle people to discredit Jiang Hai, or to say that Jiang Hai would never leave. Other than that, they did not do anything else. It was not until the afternoon that Augustine Wilson stood up. According to him, the reason he brought Ceylonese people over was that he had worked in the factory before. He knew that the factory met American standards and would not pollute the environment. After all, this was his home. However, he did not want any irreconcilable conflicts between Ceylonese and Jiang Hai. Therefore, he decided to talk to Jiang Hai personally and persuade him not to leave. He also wanted to let Ceylonese move in. After he stood up, a lot of people supported him and followed him to Jiang Hai's place. For a while, he became a positive figure. It's true that when the forest is big, there are all kinds of birds. He even became a leader. But unfortunately, they were given the cold shoulder because Jiang Hai wasn't in the manor today. Huang Yunfei and the others hadn't left yet. Jiang Hai naturally wanted to accompany them to play. Anyway, his attitude had already been made clear. As for whether they believe it or not, it's up to them to decide. At most, he would sell the manor and take the cows and his fish to other places, although it would be troublesome. But now, Jiang Hai had the ability to go wherever he wanted. This was his greatest ability. When these people came to visit, Jiang Hai was at Old George's horse farm, leading Fu Yuan and the others to ride horses. Originally, there were horses in Jiang Hai's manor, but after all, there were now many cows in the manor. People like Robbins Garcia had to take care of the cows. There was no one to teach Fu Yuan and the others how to ride horses. There was also no one to take care of them. Instead of causing trouble in the manor, it was better to come to Old George's horse farm to play. Looking at Jiang Hai, Old George had obviously received some news. "Jiang, you're not really leaving, are you?" Looking at Jiang Hai, who was tired from riding and resting, Old George walked over and handed over a bottle of drink. Then, he said to Jiang Hai with some worry, "If the chemical plant is not built, why should I leave? I still like this place. It can be considered my home. But if that chemical plant is built, then I will have to leave." After taking a sip of the Coca-Cola that Old George handed over, Jiang Hai burped and said to Old George seriously, Why? The chemical plant is not in your way. Why do you have to leave?" Hearing that Jiang Hai was really leaving, Old George could not help but be a little excited. After all, his horse farm originally relied on selling horses for a living. Although it was not to the extent that he could not survive, his life was not too rich. But since Jiang Hai brought the tourists from Huaxia, this was the first time he knew that he could make so much money by letting people ride horses. The money he earned in the past 2 months was more than what he earned in a year by selling horses. Now that Jiang Hai was leaving, his heart was cold. "I can tell you. You also know that the cattle in my manor are very good." "Why?" "It's mainly because of the environment. My manor does not allow a little bit of pollution. If there is a little bit of pollution, the quality of the cattle in my manor will be greatly reduced. So if this chemical plant enters Winthrop, I can only leave." Looking at Old George, Jiang Hai thought for a while and made up a lie. There are some things that he can't say directly. Dragon balls, scales, aura, these things, they can't understand. Not to mention that he doesn't want to be cut into pieces for research. But it's a good idea to talk about cattle. This is also the explanation that he thought for a long time last night. And this explanation is also very persuasive. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Old George couldn't help but say, "Oh." Indeed, Jiang Hai wants to make money by relying on Winthrop, but how much money can Winthrop make for him? 18 million a year? That was all there was to it. His main source of income was still his manor and his ranch. If Jiang Hai's soaring dragon manor is destroyed because of the chemical plant, then Jiang Hai's gains really don't make up for the losses. When Jiang Hai said this, Old George also believed it. This explanation is indeed reasonable. But what chemical plant? Didn't they say that they won't pollute the environment? At this time, Old George's heart was already biased. For him, Jiang Hai's existence is very important. If the contradiction between Jiang Hai and that chemical plant is irreconcilable, then he will definitely stand by Jiang Hai's side. This can be seen from his new title. There is a chemical plant that won't pollute the environment? Hee, whether you believe it or not, I don't believe it. Shrugging, Jiang Hai said calmly. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, old George, who has experienced the United States Civil War, couldn't help but laugh. He remembered the lies that the American government had told him when he was very young in order to develop the country. Chemical plants won't pollute, mines won't pollute, the West is full of gold. For these American civilians, the credibility of the United States government is just that. In this way, another person joined Jiang Hai's camp. But they didn't notice that at this time, in a corner in the distance, a white man also heard Jiang Hai's words. After hearing Jiang Hai's words, he frowned, then walked to the corner and took out his mobile phone. Not long after, Peter, who was still examining Winthrop, received a call from above. After learning that the news released by Jiang Hai was true, his eyes narrowed. It seems that between him and Jiang Hai, one of them must retreat in order to settle this matter. But thinking about it, he was still a little excited. If things went too smoothly, how could he be praised? Recently, he heard that the company's board of directors' dissatisfaction with the current general manager was about to reach the limit. If he performed well at this time, would he have the opportunity to compete for the position of being second only to one person? Thinking of this, Peter's eyes also lit up. In order to step on Jiang Hai, it seems that the debate has to continue. Isn't Jiang Hai going to leave? That's good, I'll let you go when the time comes. Thinking of this, he took out his mobile phone and sent a text message to Jiang Hai Wilson. Sometimes, it was so easy to plot against an unsuspecting person. And most importantly, he didn't think that Jiang Hai could win against him. Just as Jiang Hai returned to the manor, a new wave of debate came again, and this time, it was much fiercer than in the morning. There were even many radical people who directly shouted for Jiang Hai to get out of Winthrop. Although this kind of person was suppressed by Mayor Wallace and the police station's Morris Smith in the first place, it was not a big deal. But after all, Winthrop was a town with a population of more than 1,000 that could be found on a map. These jobless, idle people, and racists were everywhere. Usually, they didn't go against Jiang Hai because there were no benefits. Now that there were benefits, they even dared to provoke the President of the United States. Chapter 608. Are you really okay? Why don't you come back to China with us first? Standing outside the airport, Su Wei couldn't help but worry about Jiang Hai. Indeed, in his opinion, Jiang Hai's situation is really not very good. Don't worry, this is my home. Will I have any problems? Hearing his words, Jiang Hai smiled and said indifferently. You are so stubborn. Well, do as you see fit. Looking at Jiang Hai's indifferent look, the three people here couldn't help but sigh. Even Huang Yunfei's wife, LV Jiao, was much quieter at this time. In the days they stayed here, they watched Jiang Hai's words slowly change. From the first day they came, Jiang Hai was almost the most dazzling star in this town. Today, when Jiang Hai drove them to the airport, the people on the road would subconsciously avoid Jiang Hai. It was impossible for them to directly clash with Jiang Hai because Jiang Hai was not a saint or a person who only chased after the leader of the evil. If you dare to provoke him, you will be skinned alive. This is Jiang Hai's style. So although they were alienated, no one dared to come here to provoke him. At most, they just stayed away from him. Well, get on the plane. Send me a WeChat message when you get home. This time you came to play, I didn't expect to encounter such a thing. It's really bad luck. Come again when you have time. I will treat you well. Looking at the slightly tangled look of several people, Jiang Hai patted them on the shoulder and said goodbye to them one by one. Isn't it enough to carry it out properly this time? My circle of friends is about to explode. Every day, abalone, lobster, sea cucumber, beef, those food, to be honest, I guess I will think about it for a long time when I go back. And these things I bought, buddy, they are all great. Hearing what Jiang Hai said, Huang Yunfei couldn't help but give him a thumbs up. To be honest, he was very satisfied with this honeymoon trip. In fact, not only him, but his wife was also very satisfied. Although she had not seen too many famous historical sites, there were not many women who were interested in those things. She cared more about going shopping and eating these delicacies. To be honest, in her opinion, Jiang Hai's place was really too perfect, if not for those trivial matters. Alright, hurry up and go through the security check. I'll look for you guys when I go back during the new year. Looking at the reluctant look on everyone's faces, Jiang Hai smiled and urged them to hurry up and board the plane. These people were also very reluctant to leave Jiang Hai's place. Of course, it was also possible that they were reluctant to leave Jiang Hai's food. They helplessly waved their hands and walked through the security check. Of course, they had a lot of luggage, but they had already handled the transportation. This time, when they came to Jiang Hai's place to play, each of them brought back a lot of things, such as maple syrup, American ginseng, all kinds of clothes, shoes, trinkets, and so on. They bought a lot. Let's go, we should go back too. Seeing these people walking through the security check, Jiang Hai also said to the people behind him. At this time, it seemed that there was no one behind him. If someone heard Jiang Hai's words, they would probably suspect that he was sick or saw something that he shouldn't have seen. But Jiang Hai didn't care. When he turned his head, a woman wearing a baseball cap appeared on his side, carrying a box in her hand, wearing a pair of huge sunglasses, chewing gum. Looking at Jiang Hai walking over, she couldn't help but twitch her mouth slightly. How did you know I was here? Looking at Jiang Hai, the beauty took off her huge sunglasses, revealing a rather delicate face. Jiang Hai was very familiar with the owner of this face, Azalina Vicabrio. The glasses were given to Delina by Prawalton, the top is Bernice's, the bottom is Paige's, the earrings are Ohilia's, the shoes are Janice, and that bag is mine. Looking at Azalina, Jiang Hai said calmly. I didn't expect your memory to be so good. Young man, do you want to learn how to cook from me? Looking at Jiang Hai, Azalina smiled and approached him, then took the initiative to hold Jiang Hai's arm, but her words only got a supercilious look from Jiang Hai. Since the night Jiang Hai came back, in fact, Jiang Hai found that Azalina's situation was not right. He didn't see her that night. After learning that she was not feeling well, he went to see her the next day, only to find that she was not in the period when relatives came to visit her. Then she told Jiang Hai that in fact, these days, someone had been observing Jiang Hai's manner. And she was secretly watching that person to see what was going on with him. After learning this, Jiang Hai didn't care about her. Jiang Hai knew that if he went out today, Azalina would definitely follow him quietly. This was also Jiang Hai's confidence. Just now, when he saw a familiar figure, Jiang Hai knew that it must be her. How's the situation recently? Walking out of the airport with Azalina, Jiang Hai asked as they walked towards the parking lot. They haven't done anything recently, but they are still looking for people to slander you. But boss, when did you become so timid? Could it be that what they said was true? So that you can't refute it? Looking at Jiang Hai, Azalina asked curiously. These days, Selene's company had not been idle. Every day, they sent people to talk bad about Jiang Hai in town. Sometimes, a lie would be true if it was told 100 times. In recent days, they had been slandering Jiang Hai more than 100 times. It was precisely because of this that Jiang Hai's reputation in Winthrop was also badly damaged, very badly. But Jiang Hai acted as if he didn't know. He did what he was supposed to do and would not be hurt by these rumors. Seeing Jiang Hai's fearless look, the other party was even happier to slander him. When the people in the town saw that Jiang Hai had not come out to explain, they thought that the rumors were true. Therefore, they became more biased and were more careful with Jiang Hai. It had to be said that sometimes, people thought too much. Okay, my friends are gone. I should fight back. Otherwise, these guys will really think that I'm easy to bully. Touching Azalina's hair, Jiang Hai narrowed his eyes. He didn't care what these people said, but he was not someone to be trifled with. Looking at Jiang Hai's eyes, Azalina also smiled. The Jiang Hai she knew was like this. He would not be scared. Mayor Wallace, is it? Can you call for a town meeting tonight? I have something to say. When the two walked to the parking lot, Jiang Hai got in his shield and directly called Wallace. As for how to inform these people, Jiang Hai did not care. Anyway, he was going to directly kill those people tonight. There was no problem with a debate, but sometimes, they would think too much, and they felt that Jiang Hai was also thinking too much. At night? You. Okay, I believe you. Hearing that Jiang Hai wanted to gather the townspeople together, Mayor Wallace was stunned for a moment. Such a gathering was rare. Basically, these grand gatherings were only held during the election year or during the annual Poseidon Festival. Usually, they would not be held, but since Jiang Hai said that he wanted to gather, then he would hold one. Boss, what are you going to say tonight? Watching Jiang Hai hang up the phone, Azalina could not help but ask hesitantly. You will know tonight. Hearing Azalina's words, Jiang Hai smiled softly. Driving his car, Jiang Hai returned to Winthrop's home. In front of the gate of his manor, he looked at the azure dragon relief above the gate. This gate was specially made when he changed the name of the Soaring Dragon Manor. It should have been about a year ago. Jiang Hai looked at the azure dragon relief on the gate. Let's go, you don't have to follow me tonight. You must protect everyone here. After driving the car into the gate, Jiang Hai said to Azalina beside him. He felt that after he finished speaking tonight, things would not be so easy to solve. In fact, Jiang Hai was now forcing these townspeople to choose which side they would give up. It was that simple. Sometimes, if the tree was not fixed, the people would not be fixed. If these people were not treated too well, it was necessary to give them a warning. But what about you? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Azalina asked with a worried look. Me? I'll take Conrad with me. Hearing Azalina's words, Jiang Hai smiled. He now had more than one bodyguard. And most importantly, Conrad looked more intimidating than Azalina. Jiang Hai did not feed him for free. At the critical moment, he had to be useful to Jiang Hai. After returning to the manor, Jiang Hai called back all the people, including those middle-aged women who were still taking care of business in the villa area. Everyone was holed up in the manor. No one was allowed to go out, and of course, no one was allowed to come in. At about 5:00 in the evening, Mayor Wallace called Jiang Hai and informed him that everyone had been informed. Of course, it was impossible for everyone to come. Basically, only one person from each family would come. After all, this was not the sea god ritual, and it was not a game. Something had really happened, so it was enough for the people in charge to come. But even so, it was estimated that there would be more than 200 people attending the party tonight. The time was supposed to be 6:30, but Jiang Hai had just left at that time. Before leaving, he had repeatedly told everyone not to leave the manor today, no matter what they heard. The men were to listen to Belle's command, and the women were to listen to Azalina's command. After everything was confirmed, Jiang Hai drove his battle shield and set off with Connerson Peters. Looking at the backs of Jiang Hai and Conrad, Bernice and the others felt a little worried, but Conrad was very excited at this time. The car soon drove out of the manor. Jiang Hai also called the town's police station and specially arranged for 2 patrol cars to stop at the gate of Jiang Hai's manor. This way, at least a lot of small troubles could be deterred. After resolving the situation in the manor, Jiang Hai drove directly to the town square. Chapter 609. Mayor, it's not that we want to say anything, but do you think this Jiang Hai has any sincerity? He said he wanted us to come over, and we came over, but he didn't. Is he playing with us? Mayor Wallace, I respect your character, but are you really not going to say anything now? The car drove into the town of Winthrop. From far away, Jiang Hai could hear the voices coming from the square. Originally, Jiang Hai came late, so it was inevitable that he would encounter some criticism, but it was obvious that some people were guiding the public's consciousness. Listening to these voices, Jiang Hai chuckled. The United States is a bit annoying. The people are too easy to take advantage of, just like the netizens of Huaxia. Generally, after something is posted on the internet, there will always be some violent comments, but there are almost no people who really know what happened. Those who manipulated this are the legendary Internet Water Army. However, those on the internet are called Internet Water Army, and in reality, they are called advocates. Jiang Hai will not let them go easily. As Jiang Hai's battle shield drove into the town, many people saw Jiang Hai's car. Jiang Hai is here. After someone in the crowd shouted, many people looked at Jiang Hai. After parking the car in the parking lot next to them, Jiang Hai and Knerson Peters got out of the car and went straight to the rostrum. Looking at Jiang Hai and Knerson Peters, many people took the initiative to make way for them, including those who were mixed in the crowd and guiding the public's consciousness. Sorry, I'm a little late. Walking to the rostrum, Jiang Hai looked at Mayor Wallace and said with a smile. It doesn't matter, as long as you are here. Seeing Jiang Hai come up, Mayor Wallace also breathed a sigh of relief and said to Jiang Hai with a smile. Sitting next to him, SH-20 Clive looked at Jiang Hai with a hesitant look. Hey, you, did you say the meeting was at 6:30? Don't you have a watch? Don't you have a sense of time? Look at what time it is. After Jiang Hai and Mayor Wallace greeted, a burly man came forward from the crowd and shouted at Jiang Hai. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai turned his head calmly and looked at him. Who are you? Looking at Jiang Hai's contemptuous eyes, the man was instantly speechless. It turned out that Jiang Hai didn't care what he was saying at all, and he didn't know him. In an instant, he felt that his face was slapped, and it was burning. Remember, my name is Calloway Rush, you bastard. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the burly man couldn't help but shout. Oh, if you want to go to the toilet, go over there is a public toilet there. Looking at this man, Jiang Hai said calmly. You bastard. Seeing Jiang Hai's indifference to him, he couldn't help but feel even more embarrassed. This guy is Winthrop, a loafer who thinks he is a gangster and cares about his face. But now that Jiang Hai didn't give him any face, he couldn't help but take a step forward. Looking at his action, Knerson Peters also took a step forward. He likes to fight the most. Looking at Knerson Peters' action, several people in the crowd moved. If there is a conflict between Calloway and Knerson Peters, they will rush up and tell Jiang Hai and this big white man that Winthrop is theirs. Of course, if they can directly beat Jiang Hai, that would be the best ending. Wait a minute, Calloway, we are not here to create conflicts, we are here to solve conflicts. Jiang Hai, hello, I guess you still remember me, my name is Augustine Wilson. Seeing that a conflict was about to break out, a young white man stood up, stopped Calloway Rush's action, walked to the front of the crowd, and looked at Jiang Hai and said. Oh, I don't remember. Glancing at him, Jiang Hai still said calmly. If you don't remember, then don't remember. After all, I'm just an insignificant person, but today, we want to talk to you about Winthrop. Looking at Jiang Hai, Augustine Wilson said calmly. In his view, beating Jiang Hai up is meaningless because they can't kill Jiang Hai openly. What they want is for Jiang Hai to compromise and let Jiang Hai accept the chemical factory to move into the town. Silent violence is okay, but violence is not. Moreover, he doesn't think that Jiang Hai's bodyguards will not be armed. If there is a conflict, he will be in trouble. Jiang Hai, I don't understand why you must stop the chemical factory from moving into the town. Don't you know that this is a good way to increase the town's tax and residents' income? Looking at Jiang Hai, Augustine shouted excitedly. Augustine, this is a cold-blooded guy. He doesn't care about the life and death of the town's residents. What he wants is for the town's residents to continue to be poor so that he can better control the town's residents. Looking at Augustine's expression, Calloway Rush next to him continued to speak excitedly. What a cruel guy. He only has himself in his heart. He is such a selfish guy. At this time, a third voice emerged from the crowd. Look at the townspeople around you. What a simple townspeople. Don't you feel guilty for scheming against them? Are you still complacent? You control the economy of this town, you control the tourism of this town, you control everything in this town. You can do whatever you want here and ride on the heads of all the townspeople. Winthrop belongs to the people of Winthrop. You, an outsider, are not allowed to tell us what to do here. With a third voice, there would be a fourth and a fifth. One voice after another emerged. Looking at these people, Jiang Hai did not do anything. He just looked at the people below calmly. Under the guidance of these people, most of the people began to whisper to each other. Now, they were starting to waver. Originally, they thought that Jiang Hai was going to say something or make concessions. But now, it seems like that wasn't the case. Yeah, why don't you let the chemical factory enter? This is a good way to increase income. You can't prohibit us from making money just because the chemical factory will pollute your manor. We also need to make a living. Finally, a young man was persuaded by these people and joined the ranks of these people. He looked at Jiang Hai on the stage and said loudly. Oh, he took the bait. Listening to this voice, Augustine lowered his head and couldn't help but show a smile. This is what he wants. There is no point in just instigators like them. They want to make Jiang Hai fall into the sea of people's war. Did you hear that? Jiang Hai? It's not that we are against you, but you can't let the town fall into a situation where there is no money to make because of your own reasons. Today it's the chemical factory, you don't let us build it. Tomorrow, there will be other factories, you won't let us build it. You are cutting off our way to make money. I remember there is a saying in Huaxia that cutting off people's way to make money is like killing their parents. You are really too cruel to do this. Looking at Jiang Hai, Augustine stood up and shouted at Jiang Hai with a face full of excitement. People like you can't represent Winthrop, and you can't block the way of the townspeople. Jiang Hai, you should get out of the way. Looking at Jiang Hai, who was still very calm, Augustine shouted loudly. Get out of the way. 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 With Augustine's words, the punks below also began to quarrel loudly. Hearing their words, many townspeople also joined in, and for a time, the square was filled with shouts. But among these people, there were many who stood firmly by Jiang Hai's side. Looking at these people, Jiang Hai smiled. It seemed that he was not the enemy of everyone. In fact, even if he was the enemy of everyone, he didn't care, not to mention that he wasn't. Hey, it seems to be working well. At this time, in a nearby block, the people of Celanese were gathered there. Looking at the square in the distance and listening to the deafening sound, Peter couldn't help but chuckle. He really didn't expect it to be so effective. He originally thought that Jiang Hai's reputation here was very stable, but now it seemed that it was just so. The voices are getting louder and louder. Jiang Hai's self-confidence has been shattered. This damn guy, he shouldn't be able to stop us this time. Hearing the words of the boss next to him, another person of Celanese couldn't help but whisper. The employees of Celanese behind them looked at this person with a trace of worship in their eyes. They really didn't think that this matter could be solved so easily. They could only say that their boss was indeed their boss. Looking at Jiang Hai standing on the high platform in the distance, Peter said proudly, "Next, we will force the old mayor to vote. Celanese entry into Winthrop is in the bag." After solving the biggest problem, Jiang Hai, the rest were just small problems. Originally, he thought that Jiang Hai would be an opponent, but now it seemed that he was just so. Looking at Jiang Hai, who was standing motionless in the same place, Peter had a smug look on his face. The biggest rock had been moved by him. "Jiang Hai, there is no doubt that you have saved this town, but the reactions around you are the cruel reality. You are very powerful, you are the most powerful person I have ever seen. You must have a way. Looking at the waves of voices below, each louder than the last, Shenticlive couldn't help but whisper in her heart as she looked at Jiang Hai's straight back. At this time, her eyes were full of anxiety. The things between her and Jiang Hai were indeed not easy to talk about, but her heart had always been with Jiang Hai. Looking at Jiang Hai standing there suffering, she even wanted to replace him. You guys are really noisy. Just when Shenticlive was helpless, Jiang Hai's voice came over. Chapter 610. You're all really noisy. Although Jiang Hai's voice was not loud, it clearly entered the ears of everyone present. This made the originally loud noise almost stop in an instant. Everyone saw Jiang Hai move for the first time on the stage. He picked his ear and then flicked it gently. Look, you've shaken out my earwax. Your decibel is already a little disturbing. Looking at Jiang Hai's understatement, many people looked at each other. There was clearly some confusion in their eyes. What did Jiang Hai mean? For a moment, those people's eyes were focused on Augustine Wilson because he was the one who took the lead. Jiang Hai, what do you mean by this? Are you looking down on the people of our town? Today, you must make a concession. Looking at Jiang Hai's calm look, Augustine was a little scared. After hesitating for a moment, he decided to stand up and said to Jiang Hai. It seemed that he still remembered his task. He was really a good employee. Oh, concession? Why should I give in? Looking at Augustine, Jiang Hai continued to say calmly. This is for the development of the town, so you must give in. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Augustine continued. Sorry, maybe you've got a problem wrong. Looking at the crowd in front of him, Jiang Hai directly took a chair and sat down in front of everyone in the town. Then, he continued to look at the people in front of him with an unhappy face. This guy is right about something. Whether you want to admit it or not, the economy of this town is controlled by me. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the people in the town below suddenly burst into an uproar. Jiang Hai dared to say this. Even the people in the town hall behind Jiang Hai were a little surprised. Didn't Jiang Hai take the initiative to push himself to the opposite side of the townspeople? What did Jiang Hai mean by this? However, Jiang Hai didn't care about them and continued. Firstly, I'm not here to negotiate with you. Secondly, I'm not here to negotiate with you. You've got your priorities wrong. Now, Winthrop's biggest industry is tourism. But without me, there won't be tourism. Hearing Jiang Hai's tough words, all the people present exchanged glances with each other. Jiang Hai's words were like a bucket of ice water, which poured over them in an instant. They wanted Jiang Hai to make concessions so that the town could have tourism and also allow the factory to enter. But Jiang Hai's words made the town's residents dumbfounded. Yes, without Jiang Hai, where would the tourism industry come from? Jiang Hai didn't just control the villas in the town, the shops, and the shooting range. He also controlled the flow of customers. The town's main tax revenue comes from my soaring dragon manor. I think there's no need for me to explain what this means. Yes, I'm in control of the town. Why aren't you trying to curry favor with me? You're still talking nonsense with me. I think you want to go back to the past. Looking at the people in front of him, Jiang Hai lifted his leg and said to them disdainfully. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, many people's hearts skipped a beat. Their gazes towards Jiang Hai also became much clearer. Winthrop belongs to Winthrop people. It's not something you can order around. Seeing Jiang Hai suppressing the whole town by himself, Augustine Wilson also became anxious. He couldn't help but step forward and shout at Jiang Hai. Whatever you say. I'm not a Winthrop. Whatever you say. Even if you treat me as a Winthrop, I'm still the richest man here. Everything here is given to you by me. Remember, it's given to you by me. We're not in an equal partnership. These things are mine. I can give them to you or not. If I want the tourism industry here to fail, then the tourism industry will fail. If I want the ranch to move away, then I can move the ranch away. It's that simple. Pointing at the people below, Jiang Hai said word by word. This feeling of being a villain really made Jiang Hai feel good to the bone. The townsfolk below were like the suppressed laboring masses. They listened to Jiang Hai's words and couldn't say a word. Although they wanted to refute, they knew that Jiang Hai's words were true. You'll leave Winthrop. Don't be kidding. Do you think we don't know how much money you can make here in a year? Are you willing to do that? You're giving up the interests of the people for your own benefit. You're a dictator. Looking at Jiang Hai, Augustine Wilson was still making his final struggle. However, when he looked at Jiang Hai's gaze was like looking at an idiot. The manor is mine, the route is mine, and the tourists are mine. You're talking about dictatorship here? Well, this is dictatorship. If you're not satisfied, you can stand up. Toph, there's no need to hide. I saw you. You were shouting very loudly just now. Well, I'll fulfill your wish. I'll take back your shop. I'll give you 1 day to move your things. The day after tomorrow, I want to see it empty on the commercial street. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, a middle-aged man in the crowd suddenly sat down on the ground. He looked at the people around him with a face full of horror. The people around him unconsciously stood aside, as if they wanted to draw a clear line between them and him. His shop was a very conspicuous one on the commercial street. Its daily turnover was about $1,000. Jiang Hai only charged him $3,000 a month to rent his shop, which was $100 a day. This price was really not expensive. It was also because the townsfolk didn't know if these shops could make money, so Jiang Hai's price was relatively low. After deducting the shop rent, utilities, and so on, he could make a net profit of $900 a day, which was close to $30,000 a month. In the past 2 months, he had made $60,000 to $70,000, but Jiang Hai took it back just like that. He was completely stunned. Originally, he thought that he could fish in this muddy water, but who would have thought that Jiang Hai did not follow the rules at all? You can't do this. You're depriving Winthrop people of their right to love freedom. Seeing Jiang Hai's iron-blooded suppression, Augustine completely panicked. He said that Jiang Hai was a dictator, that Jiang Hai was only interested in profits, and that Jiang Hai was controlling the town. Jiang Hai actually admitted all these points of attack. And most importantly, after Jiang Hai admitted it, he directly fought back. This is how I am. If you don't agree with me, you can say it. The problem now was that everyone was convinced. So now, he could only use human rights and freedom in the United States to speak, but his words were already quite weak. If you want human rights and freedom, it's up to you. But if you want to maintain the current situation, then I will never allow any factory to enter the town. Winthrop is yours. Mayor Wallace can vote at any time. You can recruit as many factories as you want. If there are factories here, then I will withdraw. I can use 1 month to create a Winthrop, and I can use another month to create any Winthrop. It's not that I can't live without you. I have money. The taxes I have to pay next year are as high as $600 million. I can do whatever I want in the United States. But if you don't have me... Jiang Hai did not finish his words. He just looked at the people in front of him calmly. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, many townspeople who supported him gave him a thumbs up. They had already thought about this problem, which was why they firmly supported Jiang Hai. These people thought too much. They thought that as long as 1,000 ants were tied together, they could negotiate with humans. They had never thought that the two sides were not equal at all. The townspeople who had been shouting loudly lowered their heads under Jiang Hai's gaze. They were not ashamed. They were really afraid that Jiang Hai would see them. Nowadays, the townspeople were more or less involved in the tourism industry. They did not want to lose their good jobs like Toph. They believed that as long as Jiang Hai said something, their hotels would be empty forever, their cruise ships would never receive tourists in the morning, their small shops would be driven out of the business district, and their restaurants would be completely deserted. Yes, Jiang Hai was controlling the economy here. They were not people who liked to wait. As long as Jiang Hai wanted, he could make Winthrop go back to its pre-liberation state overnight. After Jiang Hai broke the window paper mercilessly, the Americans behaved themselves. No one would go against money, not to mention that Jiang Hai had never done anything that would incur the wrath of the heavens. He had never bullied a man, nor did he dominate a woman. He was always polite to everyone, but sometimes, this politeness would be used as a tool to attack others. You're threatening the townspeople. Everyone, don't be deceived by his flowery words. This is a hegemony, this is a dictatorship. Seeing that the townspeople had completely fallen silent, Augustine couldn't help but shout to the people around him. However, the townspeople who were very enthusiastic just now were now only those hoodlums. All the decent townspeople were now well behaved. Seeing that no one supported them, Augustine and the others were really flustered this time. They just looked at Jiang Hai on the high platform. Jiang Hai had a mocking smile on his face. He was mocking them, literally. I'm a narrow-minded person. Today's matter, I hope it's the first and last time. I'm here to make it clear that if Winthrop enters any factory, I will withdraw from here. Of course, if there is no factory, then I will help develop the tourist attractions here. I've tentatively decided to build a water park here after March next year. The specific situation will be discussed at that time. Seeing that the townspeople were well behaved, Jiang Hai didn't pressure them blindly. It's a good strategy to give them a carrot after giving them a stick. Jiang Hai has a lot of money now, and he will have more money after he collects the fish next year. The money is in the bank. In addition to paying taxes to the American government, he also has to find some ways to spend the money. Damn it. Seeing that Jiang Hai ruined the plan that they had prepared for so many days with just a few words, Augustine was not reconciled. He was really not reconciled, but his words attracted Jiang Hai's attention. By the way, I said, I'm a narrow-minded person. I don't want any shops to entertain these guys. Otherwise, they are going against me. Thank you. Pointing to Augustine and the others, Jiang Hai said word by word. Chapter 6:11. You bastard, I'll kill you. Upon hearing Jiang Hai's words, the hooligans' minds buzzed. Now, no one doubted the strength of Jiang Hai's words. If Jiang Hai said in front of everyone that they couldn't buy anything, then they really couldn't buy anything. Especially at this time, the only thing they could do was to leave Winthrop, and that was all. Jiang Hai was going to kill them all. Immediately, many people went crazy. They screamed and pounced on Jiang Hai, who was on the high platform. Connerson Peters, who had been standing behind Jiang Hai, grinned. He had been waiting for this scene all night. Looking at the few people who pounced on him, Connerson screamed and pounced on them. He punched the biggest guy who had been shouting the loudest and sent him flying. His face was deformed in an instant, and he even lost a few teeth. He lay on the ground, unable to move. Seeing that Connerson had actually attacked, the other hooligans did not hold back either. They screamed and pounced on him. Unfortunately, how could they be a match for Connerson? What's more, now that the townspeople had calmed down, they definitely wouldn't provoke Jiang Hai because of them. The women immediately retreated, and so did the old man. However, the brawny men didn't care about the fact that they were from the same town. They went up and caught a lot of people. Only 2 or 3 people ran to Connerson. Connerson wasn't polite to these people who came from 1,000 miles away to deliver their heads to him. He punched each of them until they couldn't stand up anymore. Although these hooligans were usually good at fighting, they were far inferior to Connerson, a black boxing master, when it came to fighting strength. They couldn't get up in an instant as they lay on the ground. Take these troublemakers away. At this moment, Sheriff Maris Smith, who had been sitting behind Jiang Hai, also stood up and shouted. The police who had been maintaining order here rushed over and took away these troublemakers. They had always been standing firmly behind Jiang Hai. You are helping the tyrant. You will not have a good ending. Jiang Hai is a dictatorial bastard. He controls the town's economy. Sooner or later, you will regret it. The townspeople will not be your slaves. Looking at Augustine Wilson, who was still shouting loudly after being taken away, Jiang Hai could not help but twitch his mouth. The reason why he was not worried when all kinds of news spread in the town was because he had enough trump cards. The relationship between him and the town was not an equal cooperation, although it was a win-win situation. He could make the town prosperous, but he could also destroy the town directly. This was Jiang Hai's ability. As long as he showed his attitude, these rioters in the town would be stunned. Because no matter how stupid they were, they knew that they could not let Jiang Hai go. As for occupying Jiang Hai's manor, this was the United States. Everything had to follow the law. Even if Jiang Hai's manor was deserted, it was not something they could occupy. They could steal fish from Jiang Hai's manor. Jiang Hai could shoot directly. Would they dare to occupy Jiang Hai's manor? Then they would not be forcing Jiang Hai to give in. They would be rebelling. The police in the United States would certainly not allow them to do so. If they did, who would come to the United States to invest? Therefore, after making it clear, as long as they were not crazy, they would not go against Jiang Hai. And these people did not break the law. It was freedom of speech. Inciting the crowd to resist Jiang Hai was not illegal. But Jiang Hai did not let others sell their things, so it was not illegal. Their only choice was to leave Winthrop. As for whether they had a job or not, what did it have to do with Jiang Hai? They could do whatever they wanted. Okay, I'll leave the rest to you. Mayor Wallace, Sheriff Murray, I'll go back first. Seeing that the rioters had been arrested, Jiang Hai smiled. Fight with him? These little tricks were useless. Just like what Jiang Hai said, although sometimes he would lose his mind, especially when facing certain women. But most of the time, he was still very tough. He was not a saint, nor did he have a saint's disease. He did not spend money to find people to oppose him. He knew that today's incident was caused by Celanese people, but this was not a reason for these people to oppose him. The law did not apply to the masses. This sentence did not exist in Jiang Hai's dictionary. He remembered these people who opposed him today. If there were any good things in the future, it would naturally have nothing to do with them. After turning his head and saying something to Mayor Wallace and Sheriff Murray, Jiang Hai returned to his car with Connerson Peters, who still wanted to continue. He started the engine and drove to his manor under the gaze of these people. Looking at the disappearing taillights of Jiang Hai's car, the people in the square fell into silence again. Ahem, I told you not to try to fight with Jiang Hai because you really can't win against him. But you didn't believe me at that time, and now? Forget it, let's disperse. The town is still the town, and we are still us. We are all villagers, so I won't say any harsh words. George, I'll let you use Toth's shop as a bar, what do you think? Looking at the quiet crowd, Mayor Wallace said calmly. Hearing Mayor Wallace's words, everyone looked at each other, and old George smiled and nodded. He had always wanted to set up a bar in the commercial street, but he was too late. A big enough shop had already been rented out, so he had not been able to get one. But now it was different. Toth dug his own grave, and Jiang Hai rented the shop to him. What could be more wonderful than this? It seemed that he was on the right side to support Jiang Hai. The other people who supported Jiang Hai were also happy. It was time to divide the peaches. If old George could get one, how could they not? Thinking of this, they couldn't help but laugh. Those who originally opposed Jiang Hai were like defeated roosters at this time. They were far from being able to threaten Jiang Hai. Now, the only thing they wanted was to keep their current positions. As for Celanese, who would care about him, This Jiang Hai is really interesting. Sandy, are you really not going to consider being with him? Having such a boyfriend is really something to be proud of. Looking at the gradually dispersing crowd, Mayor Wallace had a smile on his face for the first time these days. Although Jiang Hai's handling of this matter was somewhat violent, the matter had finally been suppressed. Moreover, it had also set a tone for the town. It was estimated that no one would want to bring in a factory in the future. Of course, if the tourism industry couldn't continue, then that would be a different story. When the dust had settled, he looked at Sandy Clive, and said to her with a smile, "Don't worry, Sandy Clive. If he didn't have so many women around him, maybe I would have been the mistress of the Soaring Dragon Manor. Moreover, he has a wife in Huaxia." Hearing Mayor Wallace's words, Sandy Clive, who used to have some relationship with Jiang Hai, smiled and said helplessly, "Indeed, sometimes things were not as simple as people thought. Sometimes, people always have to understand some trade-offs. The world of the rich is destined to be different from ours. Because they have fewer requirements for laws and standards of living, they can live more freely. I think you know what I'm saying." Hearing Shtuani Clive's words, Mayor Wallace smiled and shook his head. Some words didn't need to be said too clearly. Hearing Mayor Wallace's words, Shtuani Clive also bit her lips. She was still thinking about this. This Jiang Hai is really a character. Just when all the dust in the square had settled, in a room in another block in the distance, Peter and a group of people also quieted down. Originally, they thought that they had succeeded. They almost opened champagne to celebrate, but they did not expect that Jiang Hai would amaze the world with a single brilliant feat. Putting down the cigarette in his hand, Peter looked at the town square in the distance and couldn't help but frown. Things were really troublesome. "Peter, now the language debate is useless. What should we do next?" Looking at Peter standing here, the people next to him whispered. "This Jiang Hai is really tricky." Originally, they thought that this time, they were sure to win, but they did not expect that Jiang Hai would go up and scold them, shocking all the townspeople. Under Jiang Hai's abuse of power, they chose to give up the chemical plant and become cowards. These people were really despicable. But there was no other way. Even if they wanted to bite Jiang Hai to death, things had already happened. They had to find a way. Now, if they wanted to complete the company's task, it was estimated that it would be useless to mess with Jiang Hai. "We can't do it openly, but we can still play some tricks. We can't bribe Jiang Hai, but we can bribe the people here. Although it's a bit troublesome, I want Winthrop to hold a referendum on our promotion." After thinking for a while, Peter said faintly, "Since the strategy didn't work, then brute force was the only way. Although it would cost more money and time, they had to build the chemical plant in Celanese, and the place to build it could only be Winthrop. As for the official situation, they would naturally solve it. As for the problem of public opinion, they would also find a way." Hearing Peter's words, everyone present looked at each other. Although they were a little curious about what Peter would do, they chose to obey because they also knew. If the plant in Winthrop wasn't built this time, then they wouldn't have a good time when they went back. "We understand." After looking at each other, everyone in Celanese nodded. "Jiang Hai, the game has just begun." Hearing the words of the people behind him, Peter also said with a smile. Chapter 6:12. Jiang Hai, has the matter been resolved? After the war shield returned to the manor, Jiang Hai and Conrad also got out of the car. After watching Conrad happily return, Jiang Hai also returned to the villa. As soon as he returned, Bernice anxiously asked Jiang Hai. "Yeah, it's all resolved." Looking at Bernice, Lilia, Delina, Marion, Azalina, and Aphrodite who were gathered in the living room of his villa, Jiang Hai's face showed a smile for the first time today. Then he lay down on the sofa with a slightly tired expression. Looking at Jiang Hai's movements and listening to Jiang Hai's words, the women breathed a sigh of relief. Then they immediately surrounded him and asked about what happened tonight. Jiang Hai also gave them a simple explanation. When they heard that Jiang Hai went up and scolded them, these women couldn't help but laugh. This was Jiang Hai. If it was another person, they wouldn't be so energetic. Indeed, this matter was because of Jiang Hai. As the old saying goes, if you don't do anything wrong during the day, you won't be afraid of ghosts at night. And as the old saying goes, if you have no desires, you will be strong. Jiang Hai's secret was his dragon balls. It wasn't really because of the good environment here that he could raise such a good cow. Jiang Hai's biggest reliance was himself. Therefore, he could create all kinds of soaring dragon manners anytime and anywhere. As long as he wanted, he could build as many as he wanted. Moreover, he didn't evade taxes, nor did he break the law. Even if someone wanted to mess with him, did they think that the 2 billion oil futures that he prepared was a joke? As long as he took out the 2 billion, the people in the world who wanted to protect him could line up from his home to the imperial capital. No one would care about a manor lord with a net worth of more than 100 million, but no one wouldn't care about a manor lord with a net worth of more than 100 million. This was the problem of natural wealth. Jiang Hai had the strength to do this. Since Jiang Hai was not afraid of official matters, what was there to be afraid of? As for what was said later, it was even more so. Between Jiang Hai and Winthrop, Jiang Hai didn't need to rely on Winthrop for anything. The cooperation between the two was led by Jiang Hai. He was doing this to make money. If Winthrop made him unhappy, then he would create another Winthrop. He was someone who wanted to make money and be happy at the same time. Well, since the matter is settled, let's go take a bath and sleep. Hearing Jiang Hai's simple explanation, Bernice also smiled. She felt that she really didn't have anything to do recently. Her heart seemed to be tied to Jiang Hai. Jiang Hai always said that he was a salted fish, but Bernice felt that she was about to become a salted fish. In the past, she had focused on studying medicine in order to cure her sister. But now, her sister had been cured by Jiang Hai. There was no point for her to study medicine anymore. After all, she didn't lack money. Staying with Jiang Hai all day seemed to make her lazier. But she enjoyed this kind of life. In fact, to be honest, not everyone was a workaholic. At least, Jiang Hai wasn't. Let's go. Hearing Bernice say that she wanted to take a bath, Jiang Hai didn't say much. He waved his hand and everyone went to the hot spring together. But was what Bernice said true? Jiang Hai didn't think so. Would those guys give up so easily? Walking out of the villa, Jiang Hai glanced at Dai, who was not sitting on Goldie's head, and Chirp, who had just returned and was lying in his nest. Sometimes animals were more useful than people, such as when monitoring. After taking a shower, nothing happened. However, when Jiang Hai returned to his room, Janice and Bridget had already sneaked in. Needless to say, what happened next was inevitable. Jiang Hai didn't need to say much about it. While Jiang Hai was immersed in the land of warmth, the situation on Selene's side was not so good. Early the next morning, those who were arrested by the police, like Augustine and the others, all walked out of the police station. Just like what Jiang Hai said, although they incited the crowd, it was not to rebel, and it was not to spread the news, so the police couldn't sue them. After being locked up for a night, these people walked out of the police station dispiritedly. Augustine, what do we do now? The man who was punched last night and lost his teeth covered his swollen face and said with some annoyance. Originally, people like them had a hard life. Before Jiang Hai came, it was still okay. They could still rob, collect protection fees, and so on. The police in the town were limited and couldn't manage so many people. But since Jiang Hai came, he gave a lot of money to the police station. Of course, he was referring to the taxes. Now, the Winthrop police station was expanding again and again. In order to make tourists feel safe here, the small police station, which originally only had 12 people, already had nearly 100 people before Jiang Hai's accident. After Jiang Hai's accident, they expanded again. In a small town police station, there were now more than 200 and 300 police officers. These people searched day and night. They couldn't even steal anything, let alone rob or collect protection fees. There were also more than 30 police cars in the small town. Every day, they went back and forth in the small town, making these people very depressed. They really didn't have a place to live, but they weren't willing to find a job like this. They were used to being lazy and didn't dare to be arrogant. In the past few months, the people of Winthrop lived very happily, but these people didn't have a good life. So when Augustine found them, they immediately agreed to Augustine's plan to teach Jiang Hai a lesson. The money that Celanese gave was one thing. They were probably the people of Winthrop who wanted to go back to how they were before. But now that they had offended Jiang Hai, they couldn't even live their original lives in the small town. At this time, at the entrance of the police station, people looked at them with eyes full of disgust. This was driving them crazy. Now, they didn't doubt that if they went to buy something, no one would sell it to them. And the people who caused all this were Augustine and Celanese people. Naturally, they had to ask clearly. Don't worry, you guys go home first. I'll give you the news. I'll go ask Mr. Ruffian now. However, at this time, Augustine was also a clay bodhisattva crossing the river. He couldn't even protect himself. Asking him to help these people, he wanted to ask who would help him. He was the main leader of this incident. These hoodlums couldn't survive here, let alone him. But now, this was all they could do. They dispersed and returned to their own homes. Some people wanted to buy some food when they went back, but not to mention those restaurants, even the supermarket didn't welcome them. These people could only leave with their tails between their legs. This also made them even more determined to hate Jiang Hai. This time, they really had no way out. Because if they wanted to live here, they could only let Jiang Hai leave here. Ignoring these people's experiences, Augustine went to Jiang Hai's seaside villa at this time to look for Peter. Luckily, Peter happened to be there. After he explained the purpose of his visit, Peter smiled. Augustine, don't worry. Augustine, you don't have to worry. You are an official employee of our company. I won't give up on you no matter what. At worst, you can go back to Texas with us and continue to work. As for those people, you have to stabilize them first. I'm looking for people from the Boston authorities to put pressure on the town and let Mayor Wallace let the town hold a referendum. At that time, your friends will all be important votes. Looking at Augustine, Peter said with a smile. But Jiang Hai made it clear that he doesn't support us, and he said such things last night. Frankly speaking, if we hold a referendum now, we may not even get 100 votes. Augustine frowned. To be honest, Augustine did not have any expectations for this referendum. It was really because the difference between the two camps was really too big. Then what if you say that Jiang Hai agrees? Hearing Augustine's words, Peter smiled mysteriously. You mean, you have a way to get Jiang Hai to agree? Hearing what Peter said, Augustine Wilson could not help but feel a little excited. If Jiang Hai really agreed, then such a referendum would not be difficult at all. Even if he did not want to admit it, he had to admit that Jiang Hai's influence in Winthrop was too strong. Although he had only been here for a year and had only really done things in the same month, he controlled the most important lifeline of Winthrop, money. As a capitalist society, no one would say no to money, including these townspeople. When the time comes, you'll know. Hearing what Augustine said, Peter did not say much. He just smiled mysteriously. However, he did not notice that at this time, on a tree opposite the open window, a squirrel was lying there, watching everything in front of it. There was a very small camera on its chest. Through the signal, the content and sound captured by this miniature camera directly entered a computer in Jiang Hai's house on the other side of the town. At this time, in front of the computer, Azalina was eating shrimp chips while watching the image in front of her and listening to the content inside. If you want to get Jiang Hai to change his mind, it's definitely impossible to use money. It's probably also impossible to find someone to pressure Jiang Hai. After all, Jiang Hai does not give face to any officials. Since it's not using money or finding someone to intercede, then it can only be one way. Hey, I hope you don't play dirty. You're digging your own grave. Looking at the image in front of her, Azalina laughed softly. If these people were really like what Azalina thought, playing dirty in order to force Jiang Hai to change his mind, then Jiang Hai would not mind letting them know that his dirty tricks were more ruthless than theirs. Chapter 613. Phew. Standing in front of the villa's door, Jiang Hai looked at the slightly gloomy sky and couldn't help but exhale a white breath. Of course, at this time, he wasn't practicing anything. Although the Dragon Ball in his body has some Xianxia style, the problem is that he doesn't have Xianxia skills. He doesn't know how to control the fog or anything. He also doesn't know how to practice any immortal techniques. And the only reason why he exhaled white breath now is that the weather has started to get cold. Tightening his hoodie, Jiang Hai stretched a little, then stretched his legs and prepared to go out for a run. Since the last time he went to the town to hold a meeting with the townspeople, it has been almost a week. In this week's time, Winthrop has changed a lot. Originally, there were still some townspeople who were hesitant. They said that they were threatened by Jiang Hai's warning. They finally settled down and began to live their previous lives. No one would mention the matter of allowing the chemical factory to enter the city again. They are very satisfied with their current life. They don't want their current good life to be destroyed by the entry of the chemical factory. Especially since Jiang Hai made it clear that these guys are absolutely not allowed to enter the factory. But although this matter was settled, there was still some awkwardness between the people in Jiang Hai's manor and the townspeople. The townspeople didn't know whether Jiang Hai was still angry or not, and Jiang Hai was too lazy to care about them. After solving this matter, Jiang Hai lived an unusual life of a homebody again. He didn't leave the manor these days. However, staying at home every day was still very cool. After doing some simple activities, Jiang Hai also ran along the river in the manor. But before he could run a few steps, he saw a tractor in the distance. It was a tractor that was pulling weeds slowly came over. Hey, boss, I haven't seen you run for a while. Seeing Jiang Hai, Robbins Garcia, who was driving the tractor, couldn't help but smile. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai also smiled a little awkwardly. Recently, Jiang Hai tried to live a gentle life. Every night, Aphrodite, Dana, Hilda, Paige, Shira, Ohilia, Bridget, and Janice, 2 of the 8 girls would go to Jiang Hai's room to sleep. In the morning, they would quietly leave. Of course, Little Huang and Xiao Bai, who woke up early, protected them as they left. If they went back alone, Jiang Hai wouldn't be at ease. Every day, he has a beautiful woman in his arms, and no one would be willing to get up and run. If it wasn't for the fact that yesterday was the last Dregs day, Aphrodite and the others were all busy until late at night and didn't come to Jiang Hai's place, he wouldn't have had the sudden urge to come out for a run today. This was something he would only do when he was in the period of abstinence. Are you ready to pull the grass now? Looking at the grass behind Robbins Garcia, Jiang Hai wisely changed the topic. That's right. Winter is coming soon. We have 27,000 cows to raise this year. The quality of the grass here is so good that I don't plan to buy miscellaneous fodder, such as crushed corn, anymore. There's a lot of shortage in the amount of grass this winter. Looking at the sky, Robbins Garcia couldn't help but whisper. Following his gaze, Jiang Hai also felt a little emotional. In Boston, there wasn't a lot of rain in the summer, but there was a lot of snow in the winter. Just like last year, if that kind of snow was anywhere else, it would definitely be considered a snowstorm. Of course, it was also a snowstorm here, but the people of Winthrop seemed to be used to it because to them, such snowstorms weren't rare. Every year, there would be very thick snow here. Last year, it was just a little thicker. The snow covering the ground would protect the land and nourish the fertility of the land. Next year, it would grow better grass, better grains, and better vegetables. Therefore, in the United States, or rather in Winthrop, people didn't dislike snow as much as they thought. In Jianghai's soaring dragon manor, Robbins Garcia and the others had long been immune to snow. Last year, they prepared a lot of grass. Of course, more importantly, they bought a lot of fodder. The fodder was made of crushed corn and some grains. The price wasn't low, but these things were also the main food for the cows in winter. However, after tasting the benefits of grass, Robbins Garcia was no longer prepared to buy fodder this year. It was better to feed them directly, although the amount needed was larger. Therefore, they had already started pulling grass half a month ago. If Jianghai hadn't met him today, he might not have known that Robbins Garcia was already preparing fodder for winter. "I'll go help." Compared to running, Jianghai was also interested in building his own manor, so he said to Robbins Garcia with a smile. Robbins Garcia naturally wouldn't refuse Jianghai's kindness. He smiled and motioned for Jianghai to get in the car. Jianghai somersaulted and jumped onto the back of the tractor, which was in the grass. Then he followed Robbins Garcia towards the direction of the cowshed. Because the weather had turned cold, the cattle would come out of the shed later than in the summer. They would come out of the shed around 8 o'clock. It was only 6 o'clock, so there was still some time. When they pulled the grass to a warehouse next to the cowshed, Jianghai found that Belle and Harriman had been waiting here for a long time. Of course, they weren't idle either. Philemon and Burke Dollar were cutting grass on the other side of the field. They needed to make the grass into straw bricks. In other words, they needed to tie up the grass and put it together in a square. Of course, tying up grass like this wasn't a skill in this place. Other people who raise cows and horses would also tie them up. However, they only tied up hay, unlike Jianghai who directly tied up grass. Seeing Jianghai come over to help, Belle and Harriman couldn't help but smile. This made things a lot easier for them. After jumping down from the tractor, Jianghai and the other two brought the grass to the warehouse. As Robbins Garcia pulled the grass again, Jianghai also learned to tie up the grass with the other two. Putting on gloves, Jianghai tied up the grass with them. He had to admit that it wasn't easy to tie up the grass. First, the grass was soft. It wasn't like dry grass, which was upright and easy to shape. Grass was soft and slippery, especially since it was still morning and there was a layer of dew on it, so it wasn't easy to tie it up. Second, the length of the grass was the same. Of course, the length of the dry grass was different too. But the dry grass was hard. After tying it up, they just had to cut it with a guillotine, and the dry grass would become the same length. However, the length of the grass guillotine was uneven. Even veterans like Belle and Harriman couldn't tie it up very quickly, let alone a newbie like Jianghai. Although Jianghai's strength was much greater than theirs, Jianghai's speed was much slower than theirs. They had tied up two, but Jianghai had only tied up one, which looked a little weird. Phew, this is much more tiring than running. Looking at the fruits of his labor, Jianghai stood up, wiped the sweat on his forehead, and said helplessly. Hearing Jianghai's words, Belle and Harriman both laughed. "Boss, it's Halloween next week, do we need to prepare?" After laughing, Belle changed the topic very naturally. He looked at Jianghai and asked him. But after hearing his words, Jianghai was a little stunned. Halloween? To be honest, Jianghai knew about this festival, but he had never celebrated it. Because although Huaxia knew about this festival, to be honest, not many people celebrate this festival. Only some games would arrange some special missions during this time, but Jianghai wasn't interested in these things. The official date of Halloween was November 1st, but on the night of October 31st, children would run around in the small town, wearing some strange clothes, just like in the movies, and shouting things like, "Give me candy" or "Make trouble." Generally, at this time, people who are knocked on the door will take out some candy for these children to eat. Of course, there were also some families who wanted to save trouble and would give these children some pocket money to send them away. Jianghai's place is located outside Winthrop Town, so it is estimated that no children will come to play, so Belle asked. When he came here last year, there was no Halloween. At that time, to be honest, everyone didn't know Shanghai very well, and Shanghai didn't mean to integrate into the town, so naturally, no one would come here. But this year, after all, Shanghai still has some relationship with the town. If someone comes here and Shanghai is not prepared, then it won't be good. Well, this is a good idea. He rubbed his chin. Although Shanghai was a homebody and hated trouble, it was still a holiday. It wasn't like he had autism. If there were kids coming over to play, he wouldn't refuse. But he was so far away, so it would be difficult. I'll buy some candy in a while. Clapping his hands, Shanghai said to Belle with a smile. His family really didn't prepare these things, so he needed to go to town to prepare. Hearing Shanghai's words, Belle and Harriman couldn't help but laugh. After entering November, the festivals in the United States became more and more special. This was also one of the favorite months of the year for American children. November was Halloween, and the end of November, which was the fourth Sunday, was Thanksgiving. After this month, December was the most important Christmas and New Year's Day. Before the new year, the manor will also usher in a new wave of savings. With Shanghai's generosity, he will definitely let his subordinates have a good new year. This is something that no one needs to remind Shanghai of. By the way, boss, you also have to buy some jack-o'-lanterns, these are also important. Hearing that Shanghai decided to buy candy, Harriman couldn't help but remind him, for fear that Shanghai would forget. For his reminder, Shanghai also smiled and responded. Although he doesn't know why he wants to buy jack-o'-lanterns, he will still abide by the local customs. A buddy told Xiao Fei that there are a lot of asterisks in the novel, so Xiao Fei took a look and found that a person's name was censored, Peter Huerte. God knows why this name was censored. Is it that even foreign names are not allowed to be written in the future? Vomiting blood. Chapter 6:14. After tying up the fodder for more than an hour, Shanghai also went to the stable and looked at little Xia. But at this time, after a year of raising, little Xia had completely grown up. He was much taller than an ordinary horse. And the most important thing was that little Xia seemed to have mutated because of Shanghai's spiritual energy. His head seemed to be slightly bigger than an ordinary Shire horse. Shanghai was more than 190 centimeters tall. In front of little Xia, he didn't even reach his shoulder. In other words, this horse was at least 2 meters tall. This didn't include the horse's head. After feeding him the carrots, Shanghai deliberately led him out. With his strong jump, Shanghai jumped on the horse's back. He didn't need to wear a saddle or anything like that. He rode little Xia and trotted on the field for a while. Shire horses were different from ordinary horses. Ordinary horses liked to run. Horses were born to run. But Shire horses were different. This kind of horse was too heavy. It was like a big fatty. It could run, but it couldn't run for a long time. This was because its bones couldn't bear it. This was the main problem. Therefore, Shanghai and little Xia trotted for about half an hour before Shanghai took little Xia back to his villa. When he returned to the villa, the 5 girls in the villa had already gotten up. But Azalina was always floating around. Shanghai didn't know where she was. Lilia, Daliana, and Marian were preparing breakfast. Bernice was exercising on the second floor. After Shanghai entered, he greeted them and then went to take a bath. After taking a bath, he told them that he was going to drive to Winthrop. When Shanghai's shield entered Winthrop, the town's residents also saw Shanghai. However, the atmosphere between them and Shanghai was still a bit awkward. They didn't treat Shanghai as an enemy like a few days ago. They even hid far away. But they also didn't take the initiative to greet him like before. Shanghai didn't care about the changes in these townsfolk. He drove to the parking lot. After parking the car, he entered the town's shopping street. After all, it was already the end of October. The weather in Winthrop was cold. It wasn't a good time to travel. Although the beach could still be visited, even during the hottest time of the day, people couldn't go to the sea. Most of the people who came here to play in the sea. Now that they couldn't go to the sea, naturally, there were fewer people who came here. Although the travel agency had already reduced the price in winter, the originally crowded Winthrop was obviously much less crowded at this time. But even so, there were still some tourists, about 100 of them. They looked around the shopping street. Since the opening of the shopping street, it had indeed become an attractive spot for tourists. On this street, the American Museum of History and the Indian Museum were obviously good places to visit. They were also free of charge. The same was true for the cathedral on this block. These places gave people a feeling of a scenic spot. The things sold here, whether in terms of price or quality, were much cheaper than those sold in China. Moreover, they were brought back from the United States. The 13 slots would also increase unknowingly. Therefore, the commercial street, which originally had high hopes, was now becoming more and more important. According to the financial report that Moses Adams submitted to Jiang Hai last month, the shopping street's net profit was $1.7 million last month alone. Of course, this referred to the profit, not the total profit. After all, the price of labor, shop rent, and goods still had to be taken into account. But even so, they still made more than $1 million. Almost every shop made $20,000 to $30,000. But it was the Native American shop that made the most money. The ginseng, maple syrup, and Native American jewelry, such as wolf fangs, were all sold at a very high price. This month, the shop had made $410,000 in net income. This shop was jointly owned by Jiang Hai, the town, and the Iroquois tribe. Jiang Hai took 20% of the profits, the town took 20%, and the Iroquois took 60%. The Iroquois were very happy about this. Usually, it would be good if they could sell their goods for $50,000. But now, they had sold their goods for $250,000. They bought a lot of things back to the mountains. Their relationship with Winthrop was getting closer and closer. Of course, the one who made the most money was still Jiang Hai. Last month, Jiang Hai had earned more than $900,000, almost $1 million, just from the shop rent and his share of the profits. In addition to the rental of the villa and the share of the shooting range, Jiang Hai had earned nearly $2 million from the town's tourism industry. Of course, the town's tourism industry was still far from its peak. According to Moses Adams, if Jiang Hai's ocean paradise was built, he could earn more than $20 million a year from Winthrop's tourism industry, although $20 million was not a small amount. However, Jiang Hai didn't really care about this money. After all, he earned a lot more from selling his body than this money. This year, he earned more than $1 billion by selling cattle. Next year, he will also sell fish. Jiang Hai felt that it was not difficult for his income to exceed $3 billion. This tourism industry was actually more due to Jiang Hai's actions to stabilize the town. As far as the current situation was concerned, it was still quite good because he was already above the town's residents. Jiang Hai? While thinking, Jiang Hai strolled around the commercial street, looking for a shop selling pumpkin lanterns and candy. But not long after, a voice sounded. Hearing this voice, Jiang Hai looked back and found that Shendi Clive was standing in front of a shop at this time, holding a bag of clothes in her hand. When she saw Jiang Hai, her eyes were obviously a little complicated. Sandy, what a coincidence. Looking at this girl, the first girl who made him have the impulse to confirm a relationship with her, Jiang Hai also smiled. Although now it seems that the two of them did not get together by accident, after all, they used to have feelings for each other. As for now, Jiang Hai was not sure if it was right for him to continue to flirt with other girls. Yeah, it's really a coincidence. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Sandy gently combed her hair and looked at Jiang Hai and said, "Are you here to buy clothes? Is the town busy recently?" Looking at her, Jiang Hai asked her with a smile. "The town is fine, it's basically on the right track. I have nothing to do today, so I came to take a look and buy some clothes to wear. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Clive smiled and said, the town is really calm recently. This kind of life hasn't appeared for a long time. After all, there are disputes where there are people. When the town has more tourists, there will naturally be a lot of rumors. The general quality of tourists who go abroad to play in the Huaxia is still very high. But there are spoiled people everywhere, so Winthrop often encounters some very strange tourists. For example, those who drank too much and caused trouble, those who insisted on buying a gun after shooting targets, or those who insisted on taking the bullets with them, or those who insisted on swimming in the sea. Once these people caused trouble, the town's police would take them away. Those who were drunk were easy to deal with. They would be locked up until they sobered up and compensated according to the price. As for those who caused trouble, education was also the priority. Of course, if they make trouble in the gun shop, they will not be allowed to enter in the future. This is inevitable. As the weather turned cold, there were fewer tourists, but last week, there was a boycott of Shanghai, and the town hall was also very busy. This week was finally completely peaceful, and Clive can also have a good day of rest. However, she couldn't stay at home. After sleeping in, she decided to go shopping. She didn't expect to meet Shanghai. She had to admit that there was a lot of fate between the two of them. What are you doing here today? Are you here to inspect or to buy things? After explaining her situation, Clive couldn't help but look at Shanghai. She remembered that Shanghai is quite a homebody. If there is no reason, he will not leave his home, especially when the weather is not very good recently. Buy things, inspect, what the hell? Isn't Halloween coming soon, so I'm going to buy some candy and pumpkins. Shanghai shrugged his shoulders. He obviously doesn't like the word inspection. It sounds like he is a leader. Do I have to pull up my pants and hold a large teacup in my hand? Hey, I didn't expect you to be so childish. I happen to have time, I'll tell you what to buy. Hearing Shanghai's intention, Clive couldn't help but smile, and subconsciously said to Shanghai. Hearing her words, Shanghai and she couldn't help but stare blankly for a moment. Then, the two looked at each other and smiled. Without saying anything, they walked towards the shop in the distance. After walking for a short distance, Clive chose a shop. Halloween is a Christian holiday. Legend has it that 2,000 years ago, the Catholic Church set November 1st as the Day of Saints. In 500 BC, the Celts living in Ireland, Scotland, and Scotland moved the program forward by one day, which was October 31st. However, they believed that that day was the official end of winter and the beginning of a new year, the day when the harsh winter began. At that time, people believed that the souls of the deceased would return to their places of residence on that day and look for living creatures in the bodies of the living to be reborn. This was also the only hope for people to be reborn after death. In the beginning, people just extinguished the fires, lights, and so on so that the undead couldn't find humans. Later on, humans would dress up as demons and ghosts to scare off the undead. Of course, these are all legends. I'm just explaining the origin of Halloween to you. Walking into the shop, Clive explained to Shanghai. After all, she used to be a primary school teacher, so she had these stories at her fingertips. Hearing her explanation, Shanghai couldn't help but nod. This Western Ghost Festival is really magical. Chapter 6:15. After all, your manor is too far away from the town. I don't think the children will go there. But if you want to experience the festive atmosphere, you should prepare more. I know you don't lack money anyway. After explaining the origin of Halloween to Shanghai, Clive smiled and picked up the things. There were a lot of things to prepare for Halloween. In addition to candies, there were some other things, such as toffee apples. In the past, toffee apples were often given to children because it was close to Halloween, which was the time when apples were harvested. Then people would put the apples on bamboo sticks and rotate them in the toffee syrup. Then they would go to Okhotsk to get some nuts. It was a little like Hwasea's candied haws. According to Sh20 Clive, when she was young, every family would give toffee apples to their children. But she didn't know when it started, but some adults were bad. But if they put needles and blades in the apples, children would accidentally cut themselves or hurt themselves when eating. Americans cherished themselves very much. Decades ago, they said that freshwater was polluted and freshwater fish couldn't be eaten. But until now, not many people ate freshwater fish. As for the bones, only Asian carp had them. Many freshwater fish only had one bone, just like seafood. But people still didn't eat them. It was because Americans were careful that they didn't give toffee apples during the holidays. Next was pumpkin pie. Americans especially liked pie. This kind of food from Eastern Europe was very popular in the streets and alleys of the United States. Almost all the fast food restaurants in the United States had this kind of thing, but to be honest, Jiang Hai didn't like it very much. In his opinion, this kind of dessert was too sweet, and the taste was too greasy. He would rather eat cake than this kind of dessert. In Jiang Hai's manor, there were pumpkins. Moreover, they weren't small. Therefore, Jiang Hai didn't have anything to do with it. He came here mainly to buy candies and lights. Jiang Hai was a typical Sagittarius. If you directly asked him to spend a lot of money to buy something, he would be reluctant. But if you let him know that it was worth it, he would buy a lot of it, regardless of whether it was useful or not. Candy was on sale for Halloween, so Jiang Hai didn't check if anyone was eating it. Looking at the candy in front of him, Jiang Hai also grabbed it with his big hands. While Sh20 Clive was looking for pumpkin lanterns for Jiang Hai had already grabbed dozens of caddies of candy. Most importantly, he had grabbed the best ones. Oh my God, are you going to open a candy store? Sh20 Clive slapped her forehead when she saw several baskets full of candies. Although she knew that Jiang Hai wasn't short of money, this was too wasteful. Hee, it's okay. It's cheap now. After buying it, the people in the manor can also eat it, and the production date is very close. Looking at so many candies in front of him, Jiang Hai was a little embarrassed. The candies that Jiang Hai packed were all excellent things. Chocolate, all of them were Ferrero and Bean. The scientific name should be called MME, sugar on the outside and chocolate on the inside. Jiang Hai remembered that when he was in junior high school, he had a classmate who liked to eat this, but later their relationship became strained. This kind of chocolate came from the United States. It tasted good and was very popular among children. Because it was colorful and beautiful, there were also many other kinds of candies. When Jiang Hai bought things, he naturally only bought the expensive ones. As long as they tasted good, he didn't care about other things, although he felt that he had bought a little too much. But if he bought too much, he wouldn't care. Looking at Jiang Hai's appearance, Sh20 Clive couldn't help but laugh. This guy was really cheap. These candies must have cost dozens of dollars. As expected, the total cost of the candies was $70, which was more than $400 in RMB. Including the Jacko, lanterns and the like, the total cost was $100. But Jiang Hai didn't care about this. He took the candies and pumpkin lanterns and left the store. Wow, so many delicious candies. Uncle, did you prepare this for Halloween? But as soon as he took out the candies, a group of children wearing masks ran across the street. This commercial street was prohibited from entering. The goods were all loaded from the back door of the store, so there were almost no bicycles on this commercial street. It was precisely because there were no cars that the adults were assured to let the children play here, even if there were many foreigners here. Among them, a sharp-eyed child saw the candies that Jiang Hai had brought out at a glance and couldn't help but take off the Iron Man mask on his face. Iron Man? Well, Jiang Hai didn't understand why it was Iron Man, but the child still looked at Jiang Hai in surprise. Yeah, you are welcome to visit when the time comes. Hearing the child's words, Jiang Hai also said with a smile. There is so much delicious food, we will definitely go, but uncle, where is your home? When the child heard that these candies were really prepared for Halloween, he couldn't help but get excited, and then his eyes flashed as he asked Jiang Hai. My home is at the end of that road, Soaring Dragon Manor. Pointing to the road out of the village, Jiang Hai said with a smile. Soaring Dragon Manor? But after hearing Jiang Hai's words, the child here looked at Jiang Hai with some confusion. Obviously, he didn't know much about this manor. Jiang Hai is still very mysterious in this town. I know, it's the biggest manor here. My father went to pull the replaced parts. At this time, another black child stood up, raised his hand, and said loudly. Pulled the parts? What do you mean? When he heard the child's words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but feel a little strange. What does he mean by pulling the parts? I really doubt if you are running a farm. In your manor, there are basically automatic machines. There will always be times when machines break down. The broken parts naturally need to be replaced with new ones, but the rusty parts that are replaced are directly thrown away. The country doesn't allow it. Moreover, they are also iron, so naturally, they can be sold for money. Although her family didn't run a manor, it was obvious that Sh20 Clive knew more than him. When he heard her words, Jiang Hai suddenly thought that it seemed to be true. Before he bought the cow, he saw a pile of rusty scrap metal in the warehouse of his manor. At that time, he muttered that he didn't know where they came from. So those were the parts that had been replaced from the rust. You are a rich person. If the parts are rusty, you will directly replace them with new ones. But most farm owners don't have that much money. They buy the parts that are no longer used in your big manor and then remove the rust. Basically, they can use it for 2 to 3 years. Seeing that Jiang Hai remembered, Sh20 Clive also smiled and said to him. Oh, Uncle's manor is the Soaring Dragon Manor. You are welcome to come and play. Jiang Hai touched his nose a little awkwardly. He wasn't a loser. He was, but he definitely wasn't a representative of struggling. He had almost never struggled. From the beginning, he wasn't that short of money. He sold the gems for 330 million. He bought the manor for 280 million. Although the remaining 50 million wasn't a lot, it was definitely not a small amount. When he had spent most of his money, he would have another source of income. Until now. Jiang Hai really wasn't short of money. He still had more than 1 billion in savings in his bank account. Therefore, he didn't work hard on small and medium farms. He wasn't very clear about the operation of these manors. Now that he heard Sh20 Clive's words, Jiang Hai subconsciously ignored it. He squatted down and looked at the children in front of him. He took out a handful of candies from the bag and stuffed them into the children's hands. Then he smiled and said. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the children naturally nodded with joy. Then they happily watched Jiang Hai leave. Jiang Hai also waved to them before leaving the commercial street. When he left the commercial street, Jiang Hai wanted to invite Sh20 Clive for a meal, but she refused. She said that she already had an appointment with her family. Jiang Hai couldn't say anything. In the beginning, he decided to let nature take its course with Sh20 Clive. He also considered the current situation between him and Sh20 Clive. Although it was somewhat difficult to accept, it was still in Jiang Hai's thoughts. Returning to the car alone, Jiang Hai threw the things into the back seat, then started the engine and left the town. After returning to the manor, seeing that Jiang Hai had brought back so many candies, Daliana, Marian, Bernice, and Xiaoya were very interested. They took the jack-o'-lanterns and began to decorate. As for the origin of the jack-o'-lanterns, Sh20 Clive also told Jiang Hai that it was a story from Ireland. In Ireland, there was a man named Jack. He was very stingy, very stingy. As long as he didn't spend money, he would even dare to play tricks on demons. It was precisely because of this that after he died, Heaven didn't want him because he was too stingy. Hell didn't want him because he played tricks on demons. In the end, he could only take his only property, a white radish. He hollowed it out and used a candle as a lamp to illuminate the ground. At first, this lamp was made from white radish and cabbage. However, after Europeans came to North America, they found that pumpkins were very good. It was precisely because of this that jack-o'-lanterns were invented. Now, jack-o'-lanterns were popularized all over the world. The jack-o'-lanterns that Jiang Hai bought were all very good. There was no need to use a candle. It had its own lamp and battery. As long as the switch was turned on, it could always be illuminated. The four girls and Jiang Hai's interest in jack-o'-lanterns hadn't died down yet. So after packing up the candies, they took these jack-o'-lanterns and decorated the manor. Especially the periphery of the manor, there were a lot of decorations. It really looked like a festival. Chapter 6:16. Xiao Bai, Xiao Huang, be careful. Qiuqiu, you have to keep an eye on the sky. Jiang Hai tightened his grip on his gun and whispered to the dogs beside him. Then he took a deep breath and walked into the forest in front of him. Today was the 29th of October. It was getting closer and closer to the end of October. Jiang Hai's manor was still as busy as ever. The cowboys looked after the cattle, the fishermen checked the movements of the underwater fish. Although the wine had already been stored in barrels, Aphrodite and the others were not idle. It was already late autumn and the vegetables in the garden had to be harvested. Winthrop was not like some cities in the south where vegetables could be grown all year round. Here, vegetables and food were only grown for one season. After the vegetables were picked, they were sent to the warehouse for storage. Basically, they were vegetables that were easy to store. For example, radishes, pumpkins, cabbages, sprouts, potatoes, sweet potatoes, cabbages, winter melons, and so on. These vegetables were Jiang Hai's winter food. They were placed in the special warehouse and the temperature could be lowered. It was just like the cellar that Jiang Hai's family dug to store vegetables when they lived in a bungalow. It was no problem to store them for one winter. However, Jiang Hai would feel a little uncomfortable if he did not eat fresh vegetables. He was already considering whether to build a greenhouse next spring. This way, he could eat fresh vegetables all year round. Moreover, he did not plant much and he did not sell them for money. Therefore, the fertility of the land should not be a problem. Because Aphrodite and the others had been preparing these vegetables recently, Lilia, Bernice, Daliana, and Marion would also help. In the whole manor, the only idle person should be Jiang Hai. Oh, there were also two idle people, Dulles Gerard and Connor Murphy. They were in the wine cellar every day, drinking red wine. According to their words, they wanted to know when this batch of red wine would be divided and what standard it was. Jiang Hai didn't understand these messy things. After all, there were specializations in this industry. As for Jiang Hai, a few days ago, when he went to prepare for Halloween, it was just a small episode. Recently, after waking up every morning, he went to help tie up the grass. It was almost winter and there were still a lot of things to prepare in the manor. But at around 9 o'clock in the morning, the cowboys all went to herd the cattle. Jiang Hai could not tie up the grass himself, so he had nothing to do. After staying at home for a few days, Jiang Hai suddenly remembered that he seemed to have said a few months ago that he wanted to see his own forest. He had not seen it for so long, so he could give it a try this time. When Jiang Hai first entered the forest, he was led by Robbins Garcia and Edouard Anderson. But now, Jiang Hai was much more powerful than he was a year ago. Not only had his physical fitness reached 4 times the human limit, his experience was also much stronger than before. This also gave him the courage to enter the forest alone. Thinking of this, Jiang Hai picked up his gun, put on his outdoor clothes, and left with Xiao Huang, Xiao Bai, and Qiuqiu. Recently, Dai Feng was transferred away by Azalina, and no one knew what he was doing mysteriously. When he passed by the swimming pool, the Greenland seal that Jiang Hai bought was playing happily with 2 dolphins. These three little guys, since coming to Jianghai's manor, really came to enjoy life. Every day, in addition to eating, playing, and sleeping, their days were quite good. But fortunately, they also knew that Jianghai was their master. When they saw Jianghai coming over, they all looked at Jianghai. After greeting them, Jianghai took the two dogs and an eagle into the forest. As soon as they entered the forest, the sky, which was originally quite bright outside, became a lot darker. This was also Jianghai's fault. This was because when Jianghai nourished the ranch, the forest was not left behind, and it was also bathed in the light of the spirit energy. The spirit energy could improve the pasture, cattle, and fish. Naturally, it could also improve these trees. In this year, these trees grew quite fast. Fortunately, the people in Jianghai's manor watched the trees grow every day and did not feel anything, and the people outside could not see the appearance of the forest. Otherwise, a botanist would find that the trees in Jianghai's manor grew better in 1 year than in 3 years in other places. Now, it was not an exaggeration to describe Jianghai's forest as leafy and lush. The leaves that sheltered the sun completely blocked the sun. Only spots of sunlight shone into the forest through the gaps of the top leaves. But even so, in the forest, the grass that was almost waist-high still blocked Jianghai's vision. Carrying the gun on his back, Jianghai picked up the cold-forged knife that he specially bought and began to cut the grass to open a path. Modern knives and ancient cold weapons were actually very different. The hardness of a knife mainly depended on the material and forging method. The abbreviation of this hardness was called HRC. It did not mean that the higher the hardness, the better the knife. If the hardness was high, the saber would be brittle. If the saber was flexible, the hardness would be low. This was inevitable. The cold weapons of ancient Huaxia could be said to be extremely well developed. The best sabers should be during the Tang and Song dynasties. However, after the Tang and Song dynasties, it was definitely a chaotic era. After the Tang dynasty, it was the 5 dynasties and 10 kingdoms. After the Song dynasty, it was replaced by the Yuan dynasty, so these forging methods were not passed down. Although he was unwilling to admit it, the best knives in modern times were made by Japan, which followed the forging methods of the Tang dynasty. During the anti-Japanese war, the samurai swords of Japan were much better in quality than the knives used in China. Of course, now they were all made by machines, and the hardness could be as much as one wanted. The toughness of the average saber was between 50 and 60. This was also the best saber that could be bought. However, Jianghai's knife was different. His Nippon knife, also called the *********, was specially ordered by the manufacturer behind the outdoor goods store in the town. Its hardness was 65 HRC. Cutting iron nails and the like was not much harder than cutting a piece of wood. Moreover, it was very flexible and did not reflect light, because it was not only made of steel, but also some other metals to ensure its toughness. It was not an exaggeration to say that this knife could cut through hair. Jianghai's knife continued to swing. Soon, the grass in front of him fell down, giving him a path to move around. However, just when Jianghai was happily chopping, Chirps, who was flying in the air, suddenly screamed. Hearing its slightly panicked cry, Jianghai could not help but frown and instantly picked up the gun. And Goldie and Xiao Bai, who had been following him, suddenly crouched on the ground. Their noses kept moving, trying to smell something different, but unfortunately, they sniffed for a long time and did not find anything. They raised their heads with some doubts, but just as they raised their heads, Goldie suddenly pounced on Jianghai. Jianghai was also looking around, so he did not notice. In an instant, he was pushed down by Goldie. After being pushed down, Jianghai panicked for a moment, but he wasn't worried. After all, he knew that Goldie wouldn't harm him. But when he looked up, he couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. He was wondering why he did not find any clues when he looked around. Even Goldie and Xiao Bai did not find anything, but Chirp saw it. It turned out that his enemy was coiled up in a tree at this time. Yes, coiled up in a tree, because it was a snake, a huge snake. F***ck, it's a water dragon, why is this thing here? Looking at the huge monster that was about 5 meters long coiled up in the tree and looking up at him, Jiang Hai instantly had goosebumps all over his body. Originally, he just wanted to see the mountain lion and its babies. Why is there such a monster in the forest? Shouldn't this thing exist in South America? What the hell is this? Just when Jiang Hai was puzzled, the snake was very excited. It kept sticking out its tongue, then tied its lower body to the tree, and slowly swam towards Jiang Hai. Seeing this guy move, Jiang Hai instantly raised his gun. When the gun was raised, the snake stopped moving, but it did not leave either. It just looked at Jiang Hai and kept circling there. Looking at its appearance, Jiang Hai could not help but be a little puzzled. What is this guy's background? Why is it here? This guy is clearly from South America, so why is it in my manor? And most importantly, shouldn't this guy be hibernating now? Why is it still living so happily? He glanced at Goldie and Xiaobai beside him and found that the nervous dog was squatting down as if nothing had happened. It was as if they did not see the big snake in front of them. F***ck, what's going on? Did you guys betray me? Looking at the two dogs playing happily beside him, Jiang Hai said gloomily. My luck is too bad. How did I encounter such a probability? This is too unlucky. Hiss, hiss. Seeing that Jiang Hai was still a little vigilant, the giant water serpent slowly swam down from the tree. Its emotionless eyes glanced at Jiang Hai, but Jiang Hai saw a trace of emotion in its eyes. It seemed to be saying that there was no harm to it, which made Jiang Hai a little puzzled. Looking at Jiang Hai's puzzled eyes, the water serpent came to the ground and then slowly swam forward. It deliberately walked a very wide path and pressed the grass under its body, as if it was opening a path for Jiang Hai. After walking for a short distance, it deliberately looked at Jiang Hai, as if waiting for him. Didn't they say that after the establishment of the imperial court, animals are not allowed to become spirits? Well, maybe this is the United States, and it's not under the control of the imperial court. Looking at the human-like water serpent, Jiang Hai frowned. It wants me to follow it? Although he was a little nervous, Jiang Hai was still prepared to take a look. Holding the gun, he looked around vigilantly and followed the water serpent into the distance. Chapter 617. Where is it taking me? You two guys are too unreliable. Are you going to defect to the enemy at the last minute? While walking carefully, Jiang Hai muttered softly. At the same time, he looked at Goldie and Xiaobai who were still playing at his feet and couldn't help but kick them. After being kicked, Goldie and Xiaobai both looked at Jiang Hai with confusion in their eyes. They didn't know what they did wrong. Phew. Looking at them, Jiang Hai took a deep breath and continued to follow this guy inside. This forest wasn't very big, but it wasn't particularly small either. Jiang Hai had never entered the depths of the forest before. It seemed that today was the furthest he had ever walked. As he kept walking, Jiang Hai found an open space in the forest unknowingly. The vegetation on the ground here seemed to have been deliberately removed, and in the middle of this empty space, there was a large puddle. Well, if it was a lake, then this place was too small. At most, it was a puddle. Jiang Hai didn't know how the puddle was formed. Maybe it was because of the underground water, but at this time, the puddle was a little muddy. And in the distance of the puddle, there was a huge hole. This hole was directly dug out, and there were even some grass and the like inside. When Jiang Hai walked to this open space, a few green lights appeared in the hole. There's an ambush? Looking at the green lights, Jiang Hai's heart thumped. He wanted to see what the hell was going on. If the situation was bad, he would run away quickly. But before he could run, the owner of the green lights had already walked out of the cave. When he saw the owner of the green lights, although Jiang Hai was still shocked, he didn't care anymore. Because the owner of these green lights was none other than the North American mountain lion that Jiang Hai once fed spiritual energy here. At this time, the original lion cubs had grown to the size of a medium-sized dog. When they saw that it was Jiang Hai, they opened their mouths and ran over quickly with their tongues hanging out. The last one to come out was the huge North American mountain lion. It was the guy that Du Feynman thought was a North American lion-like creature. However, this guy had simply absorbed a little bit of Jiang Hai's spiritual energy. In addition, he hunted rabbits and pheasants that contained spiritual energy every day, so he broke through the limits of his body. It's you guys. Looking at the little guys running over, Jiang Hai also squatted down and hugged the little guys running over, then rubbed their heads hard. At this time, the little guys were also jumping around Jiang Hai excitedly. Looking at the appearance of these little guys, Jiang Hai laughed. He didn't expect them to grow so fast. Ao, ao. At this time, the North American mountain lion mother walked over and used its huge head to nudge Jiang Hai. Then, it cried out twice to show its welcome to Jiang Hai. Jiang Hai couldn't help but laugh. He was born to like these fierce animals, especially when these big cats were acting cute. It was really quite strange. Okay, you guys live here. What's the situation with the water gloom? After patting these guys' heads, Jiang Hai looked at the water gloom in the distance. He remembered that this guy brought him here. It seemed that the mountain lion family didn't have any hostility towards the water gloom. This made Jiang Hai a little hesitant. What's going on? Maybe it felt that Jiang Hai was looking over. The water gloom swam to the side of the waterhole at this time and looked at Jiang Hai. Then, it used its tail to whip the water surface of the waterhole twice. Then, a huge figure floated out of the waterhole. When he saw this figure, Jiang Hai couldn't help but gasp because the figure that floated out of the waterhole was none other than a huge crocodile. He had to admit that when a crocodile rose from the water, especially from the very turbid water, it was even more terrifying than the water gloom above his head. Looking at this guy floating up, Jiang Hai couldn't help but gulp. However, after this crocodile floated up, it didn't move when it saw Jiang Hai. Instead, it looked at Jiang Hai with its emotionless eyes and slowly climbed out of the water. It looked at him from afar, just like the water gloom. This scene seems a little familiar. Looking at the crocodile and the water gloom standing there, Jiang Hai's brain suddenly seemed to stop working. A scene suddenly emerged in his mind. The crocodile and the water gloom, two creatures that shouldn't have appeared here, appeared in front of him. This made Jiang Hai a little confused, but the moment the scene appeared in his sealed memory, Jiang Hai remembered them. Ah, in that wild animal warehouse. Oh my God, it's you guys. Looking at the appearance of the snake and the crocodile, Jiang Hai instantly slapped his head. He suddenly understood why Little Yellow, Little White, and Chirps didn't make any movements at all. Instead, it was as if they didn't see them at all. Jiang Hai looked at the snake and crocodile. Also, why did the snake and crocodile coexist peacefully, and why was the mountain lion here? There was only one answer: spiritual energy. Animals were much more sensitive than humans. Although Jiang Hai didn't know how these two guys escaped, after escaping, they clearly found Jiang Hai and felt that the spiritual energy in Jiang Hai's place was different from other places. The reason why they coexisted peacefully was because they felt the familiar feeling in each other's bodies. It was precisely because of this that the three of them were in the forest, and the water gloom led Jiang Hai here after seeing him. It's you guys. Letting go of the small mountain lion beside him, Jiang Hai walked in front of the two big guys and touched their heads hard. However, snakes and crocodiles are cold-blooded animals after all. They are not kittens or puppies. They are not used to being touched by others. After being touched by Jiang Hai twice, they took the initiative to move away. Although I don't know how you came here, this is not bad. There is enough food in this forest for you to eat. You can live here in the future. Looking at the two guys in front of him, Jiang Hai said with a smile. To be honest, Jiang Hai originally wanted to raise these two guys. Now it seems like a good choice. The sand tiger shark has aura, so I raised it into a great white shark. The mountain lion has aura, so I raised it into a North American lion. I'm going to focus on the two of you. What will you become in the future? What is the biggest snake? It seems that the water gloom is the biggest snake. Then what is bigger than the water gloom? What is the biggest crocodile? Looking at the crocodile and snake in front of him, Jiang Hai said with a smile. This time, with these three guys guarding his forest, it should be safe. Now he has begun to name these guys, but maybe because he is not in the right state today, he did not succeed. But he was still looking forward to it. If this big snake grows bigger than the average snake, and if this crocodile also develops a second time, Jiang Hai remembered that the biggest snake was the titanoboa. Legend has it that after the extinction of the dinosaurs, it was the most powerful cold-blooded animal. The largest snake can grow to more than 10 meters. If Jiang Hai trains it carefully, this water gloom may have a chance to return to the glory of its ancestors. Thinking about it, at that time, the plot of the Anaconda disaster movie may not necessarily not happen in reality. As for the crocodile, the biggest one should be the giant crocodile, which is also more than 10 meters long. It is used to kill dinosaurs to eat. Jiang Hai does not have any dinosaurs here. But if this crocodile can also grow to more than 10 meters long, just thinking about it is a very good thing. Jiang Hai played with them for a while. When he was about to leave, he injected some aura into the three guys and one beast. Those small mountain lions have not grown up yet, so Jiang Hai gave them all some aura. After everything was done, Jiang Hai left the forest with Xiao Bai, Goldie, and Qiuqiu. I wonder what this forest will look like in the future. Thinking about it, I am really looking forward to it. At this time, Jiang Hai's manor is considered impregnable. The front side is defended by Jiang Hai, his cowboys, and his sailors. In the sea, there are two big sharks, more than 10 dolphins, and a sea monster, the king's sour squid, to defend. On the land, there is the water gloom, the crocodile, and the mountain lions to defend. Now, Jiang Hai wants to let people try and test his strength. However, just as Jiang Hai is in high spirits, there are people in Boston who do not look so good. Since Celanese' last attack was disrupted by Jiang Hai, Celanese has no means to do anything in Winthrop. No matter what they say, no one will listen to them, including Celanese delegation and the gangsters. They can't even buy a bottle of water in Winthrop. Because of this, after that night, Celanese delegation left on the third day. However, the gangsters stayed in town. Every day, they rely on Augustine to buy things from Boston and bring them back to eat and drink. Their lives are really not good. The person in charge of Celanese, Peter ****, who had been chased out of the town, found Faraday Kirk, who had asked them to take over Winthrop and guaranteed their success. Originally, Faraday Kirk wanted to deny it, but he did not expect that the people of Celanese had recorded their conversation. The people of Celanese said to either help them settle the matter, or report him to the authorities. The money he received was enough to keep him in prison for the rest of his life. He wanted to pay compensation, but Celanese people did not want it. Therefore, he could only bitterly ask for his connections. He went to Winthrop and asked his old friend for help. But after listening to his words, his old friend didn't say anything. He just showed Faraday the list of taxes that Jiang Hai will have to pay next year. This made Faraday completely stunned. Next year, Jiang Hai will have to pay more than 600 million yuan in taxes. 400 million was to be paid to the federal government, and about 200 million was to be paid to the state. Although Boston is a metropolitan area, it is definitely at the bottom of the top 10 metropolitan areas in the United States. It was not New York, and it did not care about a few $100 million. They cared a lot. It could be said that Jiang Hai was their god of wealth. Just like Jiang Hai said, no one dared to touch him. Chapter 618. Are you sure someone will come tonight? You're so ferocious. Why would the kids come looking for you? While hanging the freshly made pumpkin on the door, Bernice looked at Jiang Hai strangely and asked. As early as a few days ago, Jiang Hai said that there will be kids coming to ask for candy tonight, but Bernice has been in a state of doubt. Because Jiang Hai's reputation in the town is indeed not very good, and the most important thing is that Jiang Hai is really too far from the town. If he drives slowly, it will take him half an hour. If he walks, it will take him more than an hour. Will the kids walk for more than an hour to ask for candy? Even if they are willing, their parents won't be willing. It should be, maybe, probably, almost, someone will come. Hearing what Bernice said, Jiang Hai touched his nose a little awkwardly. To be honest, he was also on a whim, but whether someone will come or not, he is not sure. Only you will believe the words of children. Okay, I'm hanging it up, I hope someone will come, but I'll take a picture first. Hearing Jiang Hai's slightly awkward words, Bernice glanced at him contemptuously, then smiled and hung the last pumpkin. After jumping down, she took a picture of the pumpkin, then smiled happily. Okay, no one will come, just treat it as our own holiday. Touching his nose, Jiang Hai smiled. Hearing what Jiang Hai said, Daliana, Marian, and Littleya all laughed. After everything was arranged, Jiang Hai and the others also returned to the villa. Because they have been really busy recently, Aphrodite and the others haven't come over for a while. Jiang Hai and the others just nestled on the sofa and watched TV casually. It is different from July 15th in China. Although it is also the Ghost Festival, no one will celebrate it on July 15th in China. At most, they will go to the cemetery or the crossroads to burn some paper, that's all. But in the United States, Halloween was still a popular holiday. Not only did people celebrate it, but there were also movies about ghosts on TV. Basically, all the TV stations today were showing movies or dramas about ghosts and monsters. This was also more appropriate for the occasion. Just like in China, there were always New Year's movies being played during the New Year. Jiang Hai didn't know much about American horror movies. He had only seen a few of them before. Alien, Resident Evil, A Nightmare on Elm Street, and so on. Especially A Nightmare on Elm Street. It was all because a long time ago, there was a popular novel writing style in China called infinite flow. It was very popular after it came out. Because of the trend, many people wrote about it. Only then did Jiang Hai notice the existence of A Nightmare on Elm Street. However, although Jiang Hai said that he was not afraid of anything, he was somewhat afraid of horror movies, so he nestled on the sofa and casually turned on the TV, hoping to see some movies that were not so scary. No one knows that Jiang Hai actually likes to watch comedies the most. This is also his hobby. But today, the TV station didn't like him, so they didn't show any comedies. Most of them were horror movies. After watching one round, he actually saw a movie about long legs on a pay channel. This made Jiang Hai stunned for a moment, then he turned on the channel. This is a Huaxia movie. It looks like it has been released for a long time. Looking at the movie on the projection TV, Bernice said with some doubts while eating chocolate. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but look at her with contempt. Don't tell me you haven't seen this movie, it is quite popular. Pointing at the movie in front of him, Jiang Hai said very seriously. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Bernice blinked, as if she really didn't know. I know this. This is a Chinese ghost story, this is Wang Zuxin. Although he is not young, he is really good looking. At this time, Xiaoya, who was sitting next to him, said with a smile. You weren't born in the United States, how can you not know this movie? Jiang Hai made a gesture to Xiaoya, then said to Bernice. This movie was very popular in China. Of course, Jiang Hai didn't know the box office, but the number of times it was replayed on TV was quite a lot. There were a total of 3 movies. To be honest, the first one was not very good, and the second one was too bloody. The best part was the third one. The male lead was changed from Zhang Guorong to Liang Chaowei, and the female lead was still the super invincible long-legged Wang Zuxian, and Li Lianjie's current wife, Li Ji, was also in the movie, showing her very scary cleavage and also attracting attention with her long legs. To be honest, this third movie was very good, and it was always replayed on TV. The combination of Liang Chaowei and Zhang Shuiao was also very funny. This movie was more funny than Ghost movie. I didn't want to watch movies when I was young. Bernice rolled her eyes at Jiang Hai, then sat there and watched. Jiang Hai didn't say much after hearing her words, so he also sat there and watched. The movie just started, and Jiang Hai was also very happy to watch it. The most important thing is that this movie is dubbed in Mandarin, which is the version that Jiang Hai is most familiar with. Although there are English subtitles below, Delina and Marian are not so happy to watch it. Just as Shifang in the movie turned into a golden Buddha and killed the Black Mountain Demon, the whole movie officially came to an end. But at this moment, Jiang Hai's doorbell suddenly rang, and the 5 people on the sofa were startled. Who is it at this time? Looking at the watch, it was almost 9 o'clock. Shouldn't the children be asleep at this time? Why is someone ringing Jiang Hai's doorbell? Although he was startled, Jiang Hai quickly calmed down, then walked to the door and turned on the video. Don't give me candy or make trouble. When the video was connected, many children dressed strangely shouted loudly. Look, they are finally here. But Jiang Hai couldn't help grinning when he saw this scene. Originally, he thought that these children might really not come tonight, but he didn't expect that these children didn't let him down. Grabbing the pot of candy still in Bernice's arms, Jiang Hai opened the door and walked out. Seriously. That said, Daliana, your father seems to be very fond of children. Looking at Jiang Hai who went out, Bernice elbowed Delina next to her and said to her. It should be, Jiang Hai is also very good to us. Hearing Bernice's words, Delina thought for a while and said. In her eyes, Jiang Hai should be the best person in the world, the person who rescued them from the abyss of hell. And judging from Jiang Hai's usual character, although his reaction to naughty children is ordinary, he seems to really like children. You have to work hard. Jiang Hai likes children so much, it is very likely that the matriarch of this family is the mother of Jiang Hai's first child. If you don't do it now, it will be too late. At this moment, Marian also poked her head over and looked at Bernice and said. Who is going to give birth to his child? Don't talk nonsense, what do children know? Hearing the words of these two, Bernice's face turned red all of a sudden, and then she wanted to take something to eat in a panic, but she couldn't find anything because Jiang Hai had already taken away the snack plate. Looking at her sister's flustered look, little Ye was obviously a little worried. At this time, Jiang Hai had already walked out of his villa. Looking at the children dressed as little skeletons, wizards, ghosts, vampires, witches, and so on outside the door, Jiang Hai walked quickly to the door. The candy is here, eat it quickly. After opening the door and looking at the children in front of him, Jiang Hai directly handed over the plate and said to them. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the children also cheered and began to grab the candy to eat. Hey, Jiang Hai, I really didn't expect you to be so childish. At this moment, a voice said to Jiang Hai. Jiang Hai looked up and found that in addition to these children, there were also 2 adults here. One of them was Mayor Wallace, and the other was a black man driving a pickup truck. When he saw Jiang Hai looking over, he couldn't help but nod shyly. Why are you here? Hello. Seeing these 2 people, Jiang Hai also walked over and said with some curiosity. His first sentence was naturally to Mayor Wallace, and the second sentence was to the black man. Hello, Mr. Jiang Hai. Hearing Jiang Hai take the initiative to greet him, the black man was a little caught off guard. He immediately stretched out his hand and shook hands with Jiang Hai. After Jiang Hai shook hands with him, he looked at Mayor Wallace strangely. Do you think the parents in town will allow children to walk more than an hour to you at night to ask for candy? Rolling his eyes at Jiang Hai, Mayor Wallace couldn't help but say to him. Hearing Mayor Wallace's words, Jiang Hai touched the back of his head embarrassedly. This was also why he thought that no one would come tonight. It is indeed too far. He glanced around his manor. It was dark, and it was indeed not safe. Too far is one thing. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Mayor Wallace nodded, then shook his head and continued, another thing is that you haven't really integrated into Winthrop yet. Looking at Jiang Hai, Mayor Wallace said with a serious face. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai was a little puzzled. You have indeed made a great contribution to Winthrop, but I can be sure that you know less than 20 people in Winthrop. You should know that our town has thousands of people. Looking at Jiang Hai, Mayor Wallace said very seriously. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai calculated for a moment. It seems that, probably, maybe, it's really close. In addition to his own employees, he knows 20 people. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.